All right, back once again. We're on part 8, if you can believe it or not. I mean, the last couple parts have been short, so maybe you can believe it. But I'm doing this for my own sake. So we're on chapter 23, Run for the Money! And we get the hero, the godly face of Sega. His name is...
Tom Kalinske.
No. It's Shigeru Majiri, obviously.
Ah, yes. The Prince of Honda.
All right. Alex, take it away.
It was embarrassing to talk to retailers when I first joined the company. They hated us because we never did what we said we were going to do. Fortunately, they did not like Nintendo either. In those days, Nintendo was so arrogant.
Dale, take Bill Gates.
Indeed, when Apple President Michael Spindler was asked in March 1991 which computer company Apple feared most, he quickly answered, Nintendo. They should have feared Apple more.
Oh, now, Peter Main is actually Canadian, so this is all you, Dale.
Oh, man.
And put the Canada in this. Put the Canada in this.
Nintendo's best year, the best year for the NES, the most lucrative year for the NES was 1990, which was also the first full year Sega Genesis was on the market.
A boot.
There's no a boot in there. I wish I could. Please.
Or you could say or with the 1989 releases of Genesis and TurboGrafx, Nintendo found itself lagging in technology behind the competitor. But amazingly, technology did not seem to matter. Amazingly, really? Okay. Nintendo.
What a twist! People owned NESs and bought games for it.
Yes. Nintendo sold more than 17 million copies of Super Mario Bros. 3 worldwide, setting a lasting sales record for a game cartridge that was not packed in with console hardware. Okay, let's see.
Which was true at the time.
Yeah. By comparison, Nintendo sold in excess of 30 million copies of the original Super Mario Bros. And Game Boy Tetris cartridges, both of which were packed with hardware systems.
And of course, technically, Super Mario Bros. 3 was briefly bundled as a special bundle with the NES, but
the sales record is
It was a sales record at the time of this book's publication.
There were other hits too. Sunsoft, 2 words, no.
Oh dear.
It's a good thing Stefan's not here. He would be horrified. Scored a major hit with Batman, a game built off of the popularity and storyline of the Tim Burton movie. Konami scored a major hit that year as well with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first game to be published under the new Ultra label. In 1987, Nintendo of America President Minoru Arakawa met with executives of Konami, one of Nintendo's 3 most successful third-party partners, to discuss a problem they saw in their licensing agreement. According to the agreement, third-party licensees were allowed to publish only 5 games per year. Konami had published a long line of best-selling games, including Castlevania, The Blades of Steel, Double Dribble, and Life Force, and 5 games per year clause was holding the company back from realizing additional profits. Based on the game's quality and torrid sales, they argued Konami should not be limited to 5 games per year. Another of the third-party publisher had the same complaint. Acclaim, Greg Fishback's Long Island-based company, also asked for permission to publish more games, having created such
having published.
Yeah. Such games as Double Dragon 2, Iron Sword, and several games based on WWF wrestling. Acclaim was another of Nintendo's top licensees. After concluding their arguments, Arakawa found a way around the rule. It's like he was holding court on both of these at the same time.
Yeah, I don't think any of this is how it happened, and of course we're going to have an actual ding coming, but we'll pounce when we get there.
He gave Konami and Acclaim second licenses so they could publish an additional 5 games under different names. Acclaim adopted the name LJN.
No, they bought LJN to secure a second license. They were not granted one and then chose the name LJN.
For its second license, Konami published additional games under the name Ultra.
Who is this?
Arakawa.
I think Konami and Acclaim were doing so well that we thought we had a good reason to give them another license. The other licensees did not like it. Konami had a really good manager in the States. He was not only doing marketing and sales, he was also a good product manager. He sometimes went to Japan and asked the R&D people at Konami to come up with this type of game or that type of game. Once he was watching TV and saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and got an idea, so he licensed it and asked Japan to make it into a game. That's not how he discovered it. Arakawa was right that Heidkamp told them to make the game, but he discovered it on the toilet.
Yes. What a story.
Wow.
Yep.
Inspirational story. He did basically co-design Top Gun, right?
Yes, he was very involved in Top Gun as well.
Under the Ultra label, Konami sold approximately 4 million copies of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I want to confirm that so badly. I have never found a source for that.
Yeah, 4 million seems like a bit.
It's believable. Based on the install base at the time and the popularity of Turtles, I know like everyone that I knew that had an NES had that game.
Yeah. What game was thought up on the toilet?
Well, no, he learned about the Turtles because he was at a trade show, and he was he went to a public
he looked
restroom.
down and he saw some turtles.
And right, and the comic or something or another in the bathroom, he ended up reading it about them, and that's how he decided to license them. So it's not that he came up with the idea on the toilet; it's just it was his reading material.
One of Ultra's next titles, Metal Gear, also helped establish the product line. But Ultra's days were numbered. The Ultra license was only for Nintendo Entertainment System, and that system was coming to an end. I mean,
there were no restrictions on the Super NES, so.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that there were.
But I'm not sure there actually were.
I think they probably abandoned it pretty quickly, but.
Yeah.
I mean, they're saying like their days were numbered, but the Ultra was like active in '88. And it's like, yeah, 3 more years to ride it out.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Even with earnings of $3.34 billion and 48 million Nintendo Entertainment Systems sold worldwide, Nintendo executives knew that they could not control the market with obsolete hardware. Work had already begun on a new 16-bit game console that they hoped would help them shut competitors out of the market, or just do something really good. All right. Howard.
Yeah. I think Mike Katz was the guy who did a lot of the things that ultimately led to Sega's success with Genesis.
Oh, shots fired! Kalinske.
Yeah, that's right. Tom Who, Boo Hoo Hoo.
Breaking Nintendo's hold on the international video game market proved to be more than a matter of technology for Sega. Nintendo controlled more than 90% of the international market, but whether Sega's 16-bit console was sold as the Mega Drive in Japan or the Genesis in the United States, the unit was simply not catching on. With memories of the failed Master System still vivid in his memory, Sega Enterprises CEO Hayao Nakayama decided to shake up Sega of America in the hope that new ideas might lead to new success. In mid-1990, Nakayama bumped into an old acquaintance named Tom Kalinske, who was visiting Tokyo on business. As they spoke, Nakayama told Kalinske that he now worked for a company called Sega. And now? What? What the heck?
He worked for Sega then, too!
Yeah.
Kalinske didn't know him from Esco Trading!
Yeah.
Funny to see you there.
Tomahawk!
I have no idea where some of these corrections come from. As they spoke, and that had a new game console that he hoped could steal the market away from Nintendo. Kalinske, who was working for a struggling toy car manufacturer called Matchbox, almost laughed. "You're competing with Nintendo. They're huge," he said. According to a 1995 article, Nakayama offered Kalinske the position of CEO of Sega of America on the spot. What is this article? Let me see. Gentry? What the fuck is Gentry?
Yeah, that's and
wait,
that's not the story.
Yeah,
we all know the famous beach story. Who doesn't know the famous beach story?
Like, is this? I'm skipping down just to see if this is an earlier story that he denied it and it came back. But
exactly,
I do not see. I don't see it.
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah.
Okay, I'll hold that off for the moment. But yeah, let's keep going.
And so Nakayama-san was not happy that we hadn't sold 1 million units. In January, about 14 months after I started there, I was replaced by Tom Kalinske, who, of course, I'd known from Mattel, where we had worked together.
Thomas J. Kalinske was a natural choice for president and CEO of Sega of America. An affable man with clean-cut, all-American good looks, he graduated from the University of Wisconsin with a degree in marketing and spent years in advertising before joining Mattel as a product manager in the early 1970s. While at Mattel, Kalinske's bold style caught the eye of top executives, and he moved up quickly. Mattel, the largest toy company in the world, had plenty of room for a tomcat like Kalinske to grow. I guess that's a pun. He began with preschool toys and was asked to oversee the Barbie line. At the time, Mattel marketed Barbie as a single line of dolls with accessories. Kalinske's team changed the strategy, breaking the line into several segments such as Malibu Barbie. When I started,
it's a quote, even though it's not a block quote. When I started on the Barbie business, worldwide it was 42 million. When I left the company, it was 550 million. Today, it's 1 billion. Now, Kalinske was there for all of this, but there were a couple of women that were actually the people that diversified the Barbie line and did Malibu Barbie and all of that. It's like he wasn't the one that initiated any of that. Now, Kalinske's not claiming he did here. That's because it says team, but Kent is kind of overemphasizing Kalinske's role on that.
As Kalinske rose through the ranks of Mattel, his responsibilities expanded and he oversaw research and development teams. One of the teams formed the nucleus of Mattel Electronics.
I was a VP of marketing at the time, and one of my product development groups developed the first portable games. We introduced them on Father's Day. Nobody thought it was going to be successful, and of course the products were phenomenally successful. Within that same group, they developed the Intellivision technology, but what happened was that because it was clear the electronics business was going to become such a major part of the company, we decided to create a totally separate company. Once we made that decision and staffed it with some new hires and with some eToy people, I never had anything to do with it again.
A rising star at Mattel, Kalinske tracked the new electronics division's meteoric ascent and fall.
I eventually ended up on the board of directors of Mattel Inc., and during that time period, the Intellivision company would report its results back in. So I had some involvement at a board level with them and how they were doing. All of a sudden, one day, the guys from Mattel Electronics said, "Oh my god, the bottom has fallen out. Atari just lost all its money, and we're losing all this money, and it looks like we're going to lose $350 million.
12 years after he started at Mattel, Kalinske began a 3-year stint as president of the company. Is that right?
Yeah, I have all of Kalinske's stuff. At some point, he became co-CEO. I think he was president of Mattel Toys rather than of like Mattel. But I've got his stuff. Let's take a moment. I've got articles, I think, that cover all of his different job roles.
I'll keep that question for now. During this time, he went toe-to-toe with television network executives over advertising sales.
Okay, here we go. So in 19... Oh, okay, that's later. So... In 1985... Let's see. Yes, so he was president of Mattel USA rather than the entire company. And then in 1985, he was named president and co-CEO of the company. And then he was president and co-CEO until 1987. So so that's not a 3-year time period. And I think Kent is mixing up his stint as Mattel USA president.
Okay. Now I'm waiting on you.
All right. We were spending millions of dollars, and the networks treated us like dirt.
Says Kalinske.
They had McDonald's and other big companies, and they acted as if they were doing us a favor by giving us advertising time.
Mattel came up with an alternative medium for reaching children, a cartoon series and a line of toys called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Dun, 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 dun. I'll stop before we get taken down.
DMCA. The idea was to create a hit cartoon series for non-network television where advertising was more affordable. The idea worked.
Masters of the Universe ended up getting a 7.5 rating at a time when the network shows weren't getting a 7.5 rating. From that point on, the networks were much easier to work with.
How do ratings work? I do not understand.
Yeah, I've seen it explained before, but I couldn't give you the rundown off the top of my head. But
we'll have to assume 7.5 is good in this.
7 point, yeah, I think 7.5 was probably a decent rating. But yeah, I mean, the real reason they did Masters of the Universe though was that they passed on Star Wars, and that was a mistake. And so they started thinking about how they could create their own line to rival Star Wars. That's where the idea for Masters of the Universe came from. And again, Kalinske wasn't driving any of that. I mean, he was in charge of the company at the time, but he was not involved in the idea, in any of those ideas. And again, I don't think Kalinsky's taking credit for them in this interview. It's just, he's saying he was there.
After 16 years with Mattel, Kalinske went to Matchbox for a short period, then replaced Michael Katz, who had spent the last year trying to find a foothold in the market. I mean, you didn't put the proper noun of Sega in here, so that's kind of confusing. In truth, Katz had seldom been given enough credit for his role in Sega's success. Much attention has been given to the rise of profits under Kalinske, jumping from approximately $100 million in sales in 1990 to over $1 billion by 1993. Much of this success, however, grew out of programs started by Katz.
We started the aggressive advertising campaign. Genesis does what Nintendo don't. We concentrated on games that Americans would play, sports games specifically, and some other products. And we attempted to develop a mascot character like Mario. I mean, so I get some of what Kat says, but there is a boatload of difference between Genesis does what Nintendo don't and Welcome to the Next Level. Mm-hmm. They cannot really be said to be part of the same continuum of advertising strategy.
They did keep up the Nintendo for a while, though.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, the big campaign that put them over the top was Welcome to the Next Level, and that really doesn't have any lineage from Genesis does.
What does this mean? What is he referring to?
I just think he means that those discussions were already happening before he left. I don't think he means that SOA specifically was.
I don't know. Like, he seems to be focusing mainly on the American side of the.
Yeah, but I've never seen any indications, so I don't know.
I mean, we know that it was in development by the time that he left. Like.
Yeah, he'd seen Sonic and wasn't impressed. He said that himself.
Several people who worked under Kalinske when he first joined Sega say that he did not know much about video games, but he was a fast learner. In the early days, marketing executives and engineers had to brief him before meetings with reporters, and some Sega America employees wondered if he was the right for the job. I mean, like half of them had worked with him already, so I think they would know.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Ryu knew him, yeah.
Playing off his Mattel background, some reporters dubbed Kalinski's Sega's Ken doll spokesperson, suggesting that he was a good-looking figurehead with little else going for him. The label was grossly inaccurate. According to those who worked with him, Kalinske studied hard and quickly developed an understanding of the industry. He demonstrated an ability to make tough decisions and willingness to defend his decisions when challenged by the Japanese board of directors of Sega Enterprises. He also surrounded himself with industry-savvy advisors such as Steve Race, an Atari veteran, and one of the founders of Worlds of Wonder, Bob Harris, who had helped launch both Master System and Genesis, Paul Ryu, who had worked on television, and Al Nilsson, who had been with JCPenney's merchandise buyer during the Atari's heyday. Michael
I don't think we've assigned Michael Latham yet.
I'll do it. Tom focused on retail and how to represent the company and third-party relationships. I mean, that was Tom. He made sure that the best people outside of us wanted to work on Genesis. Shinobu Toyota was the vice president of licensing, and he was the man behind building the Sonic franchises and licensing in and out. He doesn't get any credit for that in Console Wars, but...
Right.
He's the spy. That's all he is in that book.
That's right.
He wanted to go to Hollywood. To this day, he works in Los Angeles at our Sega PC offices. They mentioned that in the documentary, which was funny.
Yeah.
He's the one who wanted to do the Paula Abdul game. What game is this?
Paula Abdul.
Holy
You know who
shit.
Paula Abdul is, don't you?
No.
Oh my!
I've heard the name, but
2 minutes in the penalty box for you, bud. Paul Abdul. Forever
She-
your girl.
Pop
Come on.
star. She was really big in the early '90s, but she kind of flamed out pretty quickly too. So
what? So yeah, I've never heard of this Paula Abdul game.
she was a big deal for a few years in the early '90s.
He's the one that would go to Hollywood and go out to the set to get licenses like Batman. I mean, they couldn't get the... Well, I guess... it was like Batman and Robin, like, done by Sega. I can't remember.
Yeah, might have been, yeah.
He was the one who made sure Sonic was on every bath towel and all that stuff. And he worked very closely with the Sonic cartoon. Which one?
Right.
That's a real question. Because if it was Sad AM, then good job. The guy who was most underrated and the guy who doesn't get a lot of positive press was Paul Ryu. I mean, maybe he would get some if he would talk to me!
Oh.
I got to sit and watch all these guys, and Paul Ryu was the guy who pushed hard to improve the quality when the quality wasn't there. He was the guy who saw the value of making money in peripherals. He
Was that valuable?
Well, I don't know what peripherals he's talking about. Maybe it's the power-based converter. How about that? He was the make it happen guy, and the sort of nuts and bolts guy who would be involved in all aspects. He didn't have the most romantic job, but I assure you, he was a really key part of the process of the success. You know, it was a real triad, though. If all three of them hadn't been there, I really feel we wouldn't have been successful. The chemistry between the three was essential.
Yeah, it was all Kalinske. I read Console Wars.
Of course, yep. Or Ethel Beth Van Buskirk too.
EDVB, yes.
She gets,
EDVB.
yeah, just because her name's fun to say, she gets more credit. A student of classic marketing, Kalinske believed that in the Gillette school of giving away the razors to sell the blades. Above all else, he felt that Sega had to get as many Genesis consoles into consumers' hands as possible and as quickly as possible. Working with his executive team, Kalinske developed a 4-part strategy that he believed could weaken Nintendo's hold on the market.
4 points. That will be on the test.
Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 4.
Occasionally, I think I've seen 5, but it's
There's
4.
5. Sometimes on a whiteboard you'll see 5.
All right. His plan included 1. Dropping the price of the Genesis from $189 to $149, with the eventual goal of getting it down to $100. 2. Replacing Altered Beast, the first bundled game, with a game called Sonic the Hedgehog that was under development at the time. 3. Assembling a US-based team to create games more suited to American tastes, which was already happening, but whatever.
Right.
That was
With a bunch of former Epix producers.
under Ken Balthaser.
Yes.
And 4. Adopting strident advertising campaigns that challenge Nintendo head on. They usually cut out this one, right?
Right.
Yeah. Because this stuff is important to the story, and then this, it's just like, oh yeah, Sega made other games other than Sonic. Let
me tell you, Ken Balthaser was not happy about Console Wars because he says that he gave an interview to Blake Harris and he talked to him at length about development at Sega, and then none of that was in the book.
And that podcast that I directed them towards you, and they only talk about Sonic as the it's the same thing as the Console Wars documentary. That's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
So I criticized them for that, but they seem to have taken it in stride, and so I'm hoping that you will be on and fix them.
Yeah, I mean, we won't be talking about the early days. We won't rehash that.
Well, I'm sure that he'll ask you, what's kind of the, was there a problem with Kalinsky's success? And
Right.
I know the byline by now, but
yes,
the general public needs to know that you can't
They
just buy market share and it costs nothing.
Yes, unless you're Sony or Microsoft, then you can do it.
Well, it doesn't cost nothing.
Well, no, it doesn't cost nothing. I'm just saying, you have to be big, huge.
Well, Tom Kalinske often takes credit for creating the advertising campaigns that challenged Nintendo head-on. It should be noted that Sega does when Nintendo began under Michael Katz. Yeah, there was a quote up from Michael Katz, which said exactly this.
And
Why
it
do
was
you
also
have to...
Genesis does what Nintendo, not Sega does what Nintendo.
Sega does what Nintendo don't.
Won't do.
What intended did. Unintended.
It should also be noted that Nintendo later responded to the campaign when Nintendo is what Genesis isn't. I mean, and they also had...
you tell me do things.
And then they also had... what's it? What was their edgy advertising campaign? I can't remember.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about, but I don't remember the catchphrase. But yeah, I talked to George Harrison about that, and he was like, yeah, we probably should have stayed in our comfort zone.
Kalinske prepared a presentation with these suggestions and flew to Japan to present them to Nakayama and the board of Sega Enterprises. The board nearly rejected his ideas. I mean, it's not like... was it Shinobu Toyota who was also there?
I believe so, yeah, doing the
I couldn't remember if it was Paul Ryu or Shinobu Toyota.
No, it's Toyota because he was doing the translating for him.
I'm sure that there might have been probably 1 or 2 other people, but...
It was like I'd hit them with a bucket of cold water. They asked, are you out of your mind? You want to lower the price until we don't have any profit at all? You want to take out our regular software and put in our best software? You want to take on this company that has 92% of the market in an advertising campaign? That's essentially what they told me. I thought, well, this is the shortest career anybody ever had. I guess I'd better start looking for something else to do. As the other guys got up to leave, Nakayama turned and said, on the other hand, he was hired to make decisions for the US market, and if that is what he thinks needs to be done, he should go ahead and do it.
I've seen and read so many portrayals of this scene. Sometimes
Yes.
Nakayama has gone out of the room and he comes back in. Sometimes he's
Yep.
about to slam the door.
Yep.
It's just like, oh my
Knocks
god.
over his chair as he stands up.
Yeah, there's. I will choose to believe the most moderate thing if they discussed all this and then they left. And that's.
Yes.
Kulinski returned to Sega of America with Hayao Nakayama's approval on all 4 suggestions. The next step was putting his plan to work. A large portion of Kulinski's recovery plans would fall on the shoulders of Sonic the Hedgehog. That's what he wrote it in red tennis shoes. The T in Sonic the Hedgehog is capitalized. Sega marketing whiz Al Nilsson had the registered as Sonic's middle name. Good on you, Nilsson. Good job. I think that was even a footnote in the volume 2, if I'm recalling right now.
Yeah.
But I don't know why. It's just there.
As the people need to know.
Sonic was the creation of Yuji Naka, a
Nope.
young yeah. Oh man.
He wasn't a game designer. He was a programmer. A young game programmer.
Whose credentials included Phantasy Star, a role-playing title generally remembered as the best game ever released on the Sega Master System. Really? Okay. And Ghouls and Ghosts for Genesis, a flawless translation of a popular Capcom coin-op game. Of the games released around the launch of the Genesis, Ghouls and Ghosts stands out among the finest. An exacting and relentless micromanager, Naka was well known for expecting nothing short of perfection from those who worked on his team. Like the programmers who created the games for the Atari 2600, Naka generally preferred to do everything from the game layout and the music, even writing the code himself. What? What?
He was a programmer. Of course he wrote the code himself. Not just programming. Everything. The graphics, the pictures. I'm really careful about everything. It's not exactly the building of the program itself that concerns me. It's the overall flow of the program. In my mind, working as a producer or director means handling all aspects of a game, including the music, graphics, pictures, and everything.
Okay, so I think
Creator of the Lawn Wonderworld.
so. I think what Kent did is he took handling all,
Right.
as in like the aspect of putting it into the game, and extrapolated that Naka created
Did it all himself.
everything.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
That is, that's terrible.
Wow.
That is truly outstandingly awful.
Yeah.
Oh
I'm
my
glad that
gosh.
this is not like one of these things I've never seen anybody else repeat.
And he wasn't even the leader on the first Sonic. I mean, he was the programmer. Yasuhara was the planner slash designer, and Oshima was the artist. Like Naka wasn't like in charge of the team.
Working as a producer to director means handling all aspects of the game. How could you take
Yeah.
from this that it means he did everything?
That is terrible.
Wow. That is... Oh, Jesus Christ.
He was the programmer on Phantasy Star and Ghouls and Ghosts. He had nothing to do with the creation of the story, the world, the plot, anything of Phantasy Star. He programmed it.
He also did the box art.
He manufactured it with his own bare hands.
That's
He wrote
right.
most of the manual. He was there at the plant. They say he drove the first truck off himself.
Oh my gosh.
Naka's demanding managerial style sometimes gave way to outbursts. Unlike other creative teams, Naka's team suffered from heavy turnover as burned out programmers, designers, and artists looked for less demanding work elsewhere.
Yeah, that's never happened on any other creative team in the history of creativity.
Mild-mannered in public, Naka was said to be given to emotional flare-ups when under stress. Wow, what a great boss. He had already established himself as one of Sega's most respected console game creators in 1989.
Oh, he was a programmer. He was not a game creator.
When the company-wide call went out to create a new mascot that could compete with Nintendo's Mario.
Mr. Nakayama expressed the idea to the company that it would be a good thing for Sega to develop a mascot character. One that could be that could do for Sega what Mickey Mouse does for Disney. As a result of that, numerous artists and designers from the company submitted design ideas and suggestions and sketches for what this character would be. A lot of ideas were considered, like kangaroos and rabbits, and we were kind of thinking along the lines of a jumping, hopping kind of character. Mr.
Yeah.
Oshima
What if
was
Mickey
the art
Mouse smoked weed?
was the artist, Masato Toshima, right? Was the artist whose character design sketch was accepted. He's the one who essentially drew the hedgehog. It's a very stylized hedgehog. And there are 3 people by that name that work in video games, which is just crazy because it's not a common Japanese name. It's not like it's, Bob Jones or something. There are 3 of them.
They should become a supergroup.
They should.
They had Toshima.
What does each of them do?
I don't remember he's an artist obviously and has also, directed games. I don't remember off the top of my head the other 2, but there are 3 of them.
Naka wanted to make a game that was similar to Super Mario Bros. Games, only simpler. Mario games use 2 buttons, so Sonic should use 1. Mario collected coins, so Sonic collected rings. The way Naka's people differentiated Sonic from Mario was by making the hedgehog faster and giving him attitude. The Mario games are slow and friendly. Sonic games would be fast, and the eponymous groundhog?
Not even close.
They're not related.
Nobody can stop Mr. Needle Mouse.
Well, of course, that thing about Mr. Needle Mouse, that wasn't his name.
Right. It was Mr. Hedgehog because the Japanese word for hedgehog, if you literally translate it into English, is needle mouse, but that's not what it means in Japanese. It means hedgehog.
Would glare at the camera and tap his foot impatiently if the player did not move quickly enough. Sonic's foot tapping was not original. It first appeared in Major Havoc, an Atari Vector graphics coin-op game created by Owen Rubin. I think that happens like every time you're idle, though. No, but I can't remember. Yeah, Major Havoc's such a weird game.
Yeah. The Japanese, unbeknownst to us, created a character with Sonic the Hedgehog. We, in America, thought Sonic was ridiculous because the hedgehog was a little-known animal and it was in blue. We thought it was silly, but to the credit of the game, which was so good, the character became established. I think it was because the game was a good game on its own anyhow. The character could have been anything, but it was a hedgehog that would have died a dismal death had it not been for a very good game.
What a way to put that, Cats. Died a dismal death.
Blunt and to the point, and not afraid of Peter.
Moreover, Sonic traveled through a surreal world designed to show speed. His two-dimensional side-scrolling environment included loops, steep hills, and pinball-esque bumpers from which he could launch at high speeds. Compared to Sonic the Hedgehog, even the fastest racing games of the time seemed slow.
No, Zero seemed pretty fast.
Yeah. Players had to make decisions in advance and react quickly to survive each level of the game. And memorize everything, because you're just going to keep running into shit. Because that's how you play Sonic.
That's right.
I like Sonic. I don't hate it, but yeah. When Sega at last revealed Sonic the Hedgehog, the response was one of astonishment. Magazines praised it as one of the greatest games ever made. Yeah, and proof that Genesis could do more than the Golden Axe and Moonwalker side-scrollers from which it had become known.
Hey, Golden Axe was awesome. You leave Golden Axe alone,
Well,
kid.
I don't know. I have no idea how the Genesis port was. So
You leave Golden Axe alone.
people at
It was good, I
Nintendo,
think.
however, remained unimpressed.
It was pretty much a typical Nintendo reaction at first. People said, look, they're trying to copy us with Super Mario Brothers, and it's the same kind of game. They can't really do anything as good as we do it. Over time, there was this kind of dawning realization that this was not such a bad product. It was the same thing with Genesis in general.
Sonic the Hedgehog was released in the United States in 1991. As part of Kalinski's proposed plan, it replaced Altered Beast as the game that came bundled with the system. People who had purchased the old package with Altered Beast within a few months' grace period were allowed to mail in for a free copy of Sonic, in effect giving them an extra game at no charge. The Sonic cartridge was also sold separately for those who already owned Genesis. Sonic was an immediate hit, and many consumers who had been loyally waiting for Super NES to arrive now decided to purchase Genesis. After struggling for more than a year, Sega was suddenly seeing success. The fiercest competition in the history of video games was about to begin.
Round one, fight!
Japan remained loyal to Nintendo, ignoring both Sega's Mega Drive and NEC's PC Engine, the Japanese name for the TurboGrafx. When Nintendo Company Limited announced that its 16-bit Super Family computer, Super Famicom, would go on sale in Japan in November 1990, nearly 1.5 million people pre-ordered the console. Could you pre-order back then?
Yeah, so yes, I believe that's an accurate statement, and I believe that was probably, though I haven't researched it in depth, the first time that such pre-orders were being taken.
All right. Yeah, where this info comes from, it's taken from Game Over, but Game Over got it from another Japanese book that I have over here somewhere. So I need to translate that sometime.
I know you're not listening, Gorge, but we need Volume 5 very badly, assuming Volume 5 is actually going to be the Super Famicom and not some weird tangent.
Let's see, what else would it be? The Famicom disk system. Maybe.
Right. No, we already covered the Famicom disk system as part of the Famicom book, so that's done.
It would be Nintendo peripherals.
Right.
The November 21st, 1990 Japanese launch of the Nintendo 16-bit Super Famicom was an international media event. Tens of thousands of people lined up in front of department and electronics stores the night before, hoping to pick up the coveted new console. According to some reports, many parents called in sick to work so that they could join the lines of waiting shoppers. All of Tokyo slowed down by the crowds, and a frenzy began when news spread that Nintendo had shipped only 300,000 consoles. The pushing and shoving were so chaotic that the Japanese government later asked Nintendo and other video game companies to restrict future hardware releases to weekends. I don't know, is this
It's a story I've heard. I mean, there's so little good information on the Super Famicom.
But it is also kind of a repeat of the Dragon Quest story as well.
Right.
So maybe they're conflating the two, or maybe there was another reminder.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of technology, the Super Famicom, which would be released in the United States as the Super NES, was an improvement over both the Genesis and TurboGrafx. Like Genesis, Super NES had a true 16-bit processor rather than an 8/16-bit hybrid in TurboGrafx.
I mean, it was a true 16-bit processor, but it was also the lamest 16-bit processor on the market.
Nintendo's research and development team 2, led by Masayuki Uemura, designed the console around visual and audio performance rather than processing speed.
Because it had the worst 16-bit processor on the market.
It displayed more colors. Genesis had a 512 color palette. Super NES could display 32,000 colors.
No, it could. I don't know what the actual is, but it could choose from 32,000 colors.
Yeah, but it's also using
display.
that. Yeah,
no, but the display is what you actually can put on the screen at once.
I don't know. It seemed like I feel like he was using that before, and I think it's just individually, you could technically display this many colors.
Not at once.
I know, but I don't think that's. He clarified it before. I'm letting it go.
Okay.
Along with its central processor, the Motorola...
The what? Oh my god, I'm surprised Motorola didn't sue Kent for defamation of character.
Wow, you are so down on this chip.
Slander.
It included a Sony stereo chip and 2 customized graphics chips that were nicknamed PPU-1, Picture Processing Unit, and PPU-2. Powered by the PPU-1 and PPU-2, Super NES's architecture included 7 special modes for handling graphics, the best known being Mode 7, which enabled designers to set parameters for effects such as scaling and rotating backgrounds. What the Super NES lacked, and what would ultimately become its technological Achilles heel, was the sheer processing power of Genesis. Not that it needed that, because processor speed isn't everything.
Yes.
But, yes, and of course, the reason Alex has gone on his denigration spree against the, it's Western tech, right, or Western design.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Western design 65816 is because they chose it originally because they wanted to do backwards compatibility with the NES because it was a 16-bit upgrade of the original 6502 design.
Yep.
But they never ended up doing it. Not that they needed to, but parents would gripe for about a week and then it would be over.
I sure wish Urumura would talk about the Super NES development, but it must have been terrible. It must have been terrible for Nintendo not to want to talk about it at all, because the console was a success.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no need to not talk about it because the console failed. So it must have been an embarrassingly unfortunate development process that Nintendo refuses to talk about it.
Nintendo's strongest selling point, however, was the game that came packaged with the Super NES console, Super Mario World. Shigeru Miyamoto, who by now was seen as a video game's greatest star, created an enormous sprawling game that expanded the Mario universe. By this time, he was producer, though, right? Not hands-on.
What?
I forget.
Was Super Mario World the last game he directed? He might have directed Mario World.
Let's see. I know he was hands-on with 3, but I just can't remember if he was. Oh, nope. Tezuka directed it. He was producing it.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Right now, by this time, Miyamoto had started working with teams of designers. He always worked with
teams of designers.
He may have created the original Donkey Kong with only 2 people to write code.
That sounds like a team to me.
One person for hardware and another for music, but the 16-bit Super Mario World, also known as Super Mario Bros. 4...
Yes, he started working with teams. He may have created the original Donkey Kong only by himself and 4 other people.
Was a much bigger effort created by what Miyamoto would later remember as a 15-person team. Super Mario World, built on earlier Super Mario Bros. Games, it marked the return of bright colors, which had been a trademark of the original Super Mario Bros. What? No, Super Mario Bros. Has pretty muted colors.
Have you played the original Super Mario Bros.?
I mean, what? Like, I will admit, Super Mario Bros. 3 wasn't as vibrant, but it's...
Right, but yeah, I would not call the colors of the original bright.
Although
I mean, that brown, contrasting with the red of Mario.
But I completely disagree. Although they were replaced with washed out colors in the series' second and third installments. No, second one, no. It's you got a bright blue sky and everything.
Yeah.
So
this is off base.
Yeah. This was also the game in which Nintendo introduced Yoshi, a friendly dinosaur who carried Mario around on his back and died for our sins. As you leap off him to survive the jump.
Yes.
Too much of a good thing, complained one video game magazine. Others extolled it as the greatest game ever made. What is this one video game magazine? I hate having good things. Too much. Nintendo set aside $25 million for marketing and preparing to release the Super NES in the United States with a retail price of $199 on September 1st, 1991. The date would eventually be changed to September 9th, which would later become the launch date of Sony's PlayStation and Sega's Dreamcast as well. PlayStation? Launch September? No, that seems... yeah.
The typing has begun.
I'm putting that as a question, but I'm pretty sure that's wrong. I don't think it launched in September at all. So...
9 September 1995 in the U.S.
Okay. All right. Fine. I didn't believe that at all. Whatever. Okay, so for some reason, video game companies like releasing things on 9/9. Don't know why. With Sega having recently dropped the price of the Genesis, the $200 cost of the Super NES seemed high. As one magazine put it, "Hold on to your wallets, Nintendo fans! Super Mario Bros. 4 is on the way, but it could be a mixed blessing for those addicted to the Mario Bros. Series of home video games, and a cash register bonanza for the Japanese company that sells them."
Just buy Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins. You'll be fine.
It's okay. It's an okay game. As the time grew closer, however, it became clear that the market was shifting. The launch of Sonic had revitalized the Genesis sales. The ABC sitcom Roseanne, starring comedian Roseanne Barr, ran an episode in which Barr and her working-class husband were to purchase a Super NES for their son while telling him they would not be able to afford to buy him such an expensive gift. When he heard this, the boy was nonplussed and exclaimed that he would simply visit a friend who owned a Genesis. There was a real market analogy to the one in the sitcom. Tired of waiting for the Super NES to arrive and unhappy about the $200 price tag, many consumers decided to take a chance on Genesis. Unlike the Japanese launch, in which the Super Famicom had outsold both competitors combined in pre-sales alone, Super NES would debut against an established product. By the time Nintendo produced Super NES this fall, Sega had already had 150 different 16-bit cartridge games on the market versus 12 for Nintendo, and its player was retailing for $150, or 25% less than Nintendo's. While no one knows who will ultimately win this spirited battle for Christmas sales, the feisty Underhog has sold a million Genesis systems this year versus 700,000 for Super NES.
That's a typo.
What?
Underdog.
No, I feel this might be accurate. I think it might be Hedgehog. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
boo.
Yeah.
Boo.
And as it shook out, because I went and looked this up, Super NES does beat them in 1991. Presuming this is talking about 1991. Yeah. So Super NES does win 1991 in sales. But then Nintendo stops reporting the sales. So Genesis probably wins after that.
Right.
Well, they stopped reporting sales of SNES.
Right.
They did continue to report sales of NES, which was pure profit. Especially by the time the dog bone comes out. NES 2. In the meantime, NEC, already shut out by Sega, now faced desperate times as it tried to market TurboGrafx as a second competitor. Having already failed at increasing its sales by introducing new technologies, the TurboGrafx CD, and a handheld console called Turbo Express that played games designed for the TurboGrafx game console as opposed to the scaled-down games played on the Game Boy and Lynx, NEC lowered the price of its base system to $99.
You there, Ken? You there? You ready? Or did you forget to mute, Dale?
Can Dale hear us?
I think Dale might have. I think Dale forgot.
Dale either is on mute or.
I'm in trouble.
Dale.
There we go.
I'm in trouble here. Okay, where am I?
Kenward.
It's Ken. Script. Line. The basic issue is that Genesis had much better known games. They got Electronic Arts to support, and they had Madden football and all that stuff. And they had more marketing dollars. And, marketing dollars count.
Sounds so
I'd
whiny.
like some kudos for picking up my word voice where I left off. Short notice.
Sometimes we gotta shake up Dale.
Whininess perfectly encapsulates that quote right there.
Apologies to Kenward if he's listening.
Who, by all accounts, is a great guy.
Yeah. In a move designed to increase market share, NEC Technologies has lowered the suggested retail price of its TurboGrafx 16 system to $99.99. In addition, the company will offer the new TurboGrafx 16 system SKU called the Bonk Superset at a suggested retail price of $149.99 and will lower the suggested retail price of its TurboGrafx CD player from $399 to $299. NEC's 16-bit TurboGrafx Express or Turbo Express Portable remains priced at $299. The battle begins. A conventional wisdom in the video game industry is that consumers purchase new hardware when the economy is strong and stick to software when the economy is tight. In 1991, the United States economy was in recession. It didn't matter. Nintendo easily sold its entire first shipment of 1 million Super NES consoles when they went on sale on September 9th. Estimates on the exact number of SNES units sold to the United States over the next 3 months range from Sega estimates of just over 1 million to an internal Nintendo figure of 2.2 million. Let me see what I dug up. Because I think that's higher than what Nintendo said. Like, I found this article that was Nintendo in January 1992. And, you can adjust these things, but, okay, 2.1 million SNES and 1.6 million Genesis. Genesises. According to the NPD Group, a company that tracks sales figures, Sega outsold Nintendo in 1991. But you cannot trust NPD figures from before 1995.
So two things. First, you can't trust NPD figures, absolutely correct. Second, when they talk about market share here, they're talking about complete dollar volume of everything, including games, and I'm sure just because there were more Sega games on the market, that in terms of total dollars, Sega made more money. That doesn't mean that the Genesis outsold the SNES.
According to NPD figures, Sega finished the year with 55% of the market, while Nintendo's share was 45%. This figure did not include TurboGrafx NES or Master System sales, which was a big failing on them because NES was still pretty good chunk of the market.
I think they still tracked some of that. I'm assuming what Kent is clumsily trying to say is that they reported the 16-bit figures specifically as 55-45.
And the competition was just heating up.
Mr. Yamauchi was subjected to a great deal of scrutiny, a great deal of discrimination. He was really dragged through the mud, and it took him 6 months to put that deal together.
Why are we going into this in this book? We already did it in Game Over. Oh, shit. It's so boring. Towards the end of 1991, U.S. Senator Slate Gordon, Republican Washington, requested a meeting with Minoru Arakawa and Howard Lincoln. The three met at Nintendo of America headquarters in Redmond, Washington. During the meeting, Gordon asked Lincoln and Arakawa if they were baseball fans. Neither one was. Next, he asked them if they knew that the Seattle Mariners, the local pro baseball team, was up for sale.
I think we'd only been to one Mariner game, but that was it. Trip Hawkins had come up and taken us, and we actually had gone to the owner's suite where we met Jeff Smulyan. We didn't have any interest in baseball. We probably had some kind of a vague idea that the Mariners had been put in play, that Jeff Smulyan had put the team up for sale, and that if they could find a local buyer, they could keep it. But there were no local buyers coming.
Gordon finally came to the point, asking if Nintendo could help keep the Mariners in Seattle by buying the team. If Nintendo did not purchase the franchise, the Mariners would very likely move to Florida, where a group of investors was prepared to buy it. Lincoln's response was less than favorable.
And I think I said immediately, bull. I mean, would Major League Baseball go along with a Japanese investor, a Japanese element? His comment was, that's going to be a problem, but that can be overcome by having minority local ownership.
Lincoln and Arakawa were non-committal. Lincoln worried about backlash among Major League owners. He was also worried about how Nintendo company president Chairman Hiroshi Yamauchi would react to the bad publicity and protests that might erupt from the news that a Japanese company was purchasing an American baseball team. Arakawa, on the other hand, had lived in Seattle for the last 14 years and wanted to give back to the city.
About 2 weeks later, he came in my office and said, "Oh, remember that meeting we had with Senator Gordon about baseball?" I said, "Yes," and he said, "Well, Mr. Yamauchi has decided to buy the team."
Lincoln and Arakawa decided to work through Senator Gorton, who was visiting Russia when Yamauchi decided to purchase a baseball team. By the time he returned, Lincoln and Arakawa were on the big island of Hawaii. Isn't that...
The
it
big
has
island.
a name, doesn't it?
But no.
Yeah,
So
it is.
the island is Hawaii, just like the archipelago.
Ah.
The state is Hawaii, and people locally, and Kent was a local, do call it the Big Island.
Fair.
Yeah.
Staying at a large vacation property that Nintendo had purchased. They had a whole vacation property, jeez. On Christmas Day, they called Gorton at home and told him the news. In an effort to stave off trouble, Yamauchi did not purchase the Mariners alone. He formed a consortium called the Baseball Club of Seattle with John Ellis, chairman of Puget Sound Power and Light, John McCaw of McCaw Cellular Communications, Frank Strantz, CEO of Boeing, and Chris Larson of Microsoft. I remember watching Norm's video, and I don't remember Frank Strantz. I remember all these other guys. The consortium met Smolyan's asking price of $100 million for the Mariners, with Yamauchi personally contributing 60% and taking the controlling voice. As Lincoln predicted, baseball fans and club owners did not welcome Yamauchi's decision. In Super Mario Land, one of Nintendo's most popular games, Mario and the Plumber must travel through 4 kingdoms, dodging arrow-dropping bees, buns, defeating bomb-carrying turtles, nokobans, and jumping over man-eating plants, pacoons, so that he can rescue Princess Daisy from evil Tentaga. In Nintendo's newest game, Hiroshi, the billionaire, must negotiate his way through a hostile country, avoiding the venomous Jingos, and skiing past the antagonistic moguls so he can rescue Ken Griffey Jr. from the clutches of Tampa Bay Baseball Task Force and save the day for the beleaguered Rain People. Is that what they call people in Seattle? The Rain People? I feel like that's like, is this from a Seattle newspaper? Sports Illustrated, no. I've never heard the term Rain People, but
I think they were just trying to be cute. I don't think that's actually a term for them. It's trying to make them sound like a fantasy race, you know.
But as far as I know from Seattle, it's not an inaccurate term. So that's why I was interested. Nintendo's purchase of the Mariners was ill-timed. The nation was in the midst of an economic recession that many economists and politicians blamed on Japan. Those opposed to the sale pointed out Japan did not allow foreign investment in its baseball team, as proof that Yamauchi should not be allowed to buy his way into the major leagues. Baseball Commissioner Fay Vincent, that guy, stated that he doubted the sale would go through, and a national poll showed that 61% of Americans preferred to keep the Japanese investment out of Major League Baseball. Lincoln had anticipated the American backlash to the offer. What he did not expect was a Japanese backlash as well. In Japan, where the economy was strong and the people enjoyed a favorable trade imbalance with the United States, Hiroshi Yamauchi was accused of arrogance and criticized for bringing negative attention to the current prosperity.
He made the decision, he did it, and then all sorts of flack broke out. There was a backlash in both the United States and Japan, a negative reaction. We had, I think, anticipated the negative reaction in the United States. I was a little bit surprised that there was a negative reaction to some extent in Japan. That really was because there was a negative reaction in the United States.
The final sale was approved when 3/4 of the team owners in the American League and a simple majority owners from the National League voted to support it. Since the purchase, Yamauchi has proved to be one of the least vigorous and involved team owners in baseball. In 1999, he would appoint Howard Lincoln chairman of the team, but other than that, he has always left Mariner affairs in the hands of Lincoln and the team's front office.
He has never seen a single Mariner game. He's never met John Ellis, our CEO. He's never met any of the other Mariners owners. He's never attended a game. He was going to come if we made it to the World Series, but he's never had to. He's never met a Mariner player. He's never met Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah, they really had no chance. So
They don't deserve.
He hates
Mr.
baseball.
Yamauchi hates everything except Go.
Except Go.
Yeah, that's a great thing.
And Vengeance.
In 1994, Yamauchi did become involved with the Mariners for a brief moment. Earlier that year, Hiroshi Yamauchi called Arakawa and Lincoln to tell them about this great opportunity for the team, a Japanese pitcher whom he thought might do well in the major leagues.
Is this Howard?
Yes.
The crowning blow came 1 year late when Mr. Yamauchi called and said, "There's this great Japanese pitcher, Nomo. I want the Mariners to get this guy, and I've made arrangements so that the agent will come first to the Mariners with Nomo. I'm not worried about the budget, anything like that. I want the Mariners to sign the guy."
Arakawa and Lincoln agreed to have Hideo Nomo try out. Hideo Nomo try out for the team. He flew out to Seattle, but during a physical, the Mariners team doctor said he had a bad arm. Lincoln called Yamauchi and told him they had decided to turn Nomo down. A short time later, the Los Angeles Dodgers signed him, and he finished the season Rookie of the Year.
He was a starter in the All-Star game. Both the Mariners and the Dodgers made the playoffs, and this is the real tough one. During the playoffs, you've got this team with a Japanese owner. They did not broadcast the Mariners games in Japan. The Los Angeles Dodgers games were being broadcast all over Japan. So Mr. Yamauchi was a little bit torqued. So I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but what is your general opinion on this whole situation, both as, in terms of the reaction and the reality of the foreign ownership in Major League Baseball, and if you ever watch. Yeah, well, I don't have any. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any problems with Nintendo. They don't own them anymore, but they owned them for a very long time, and I have no problem with the fact that they owned the team. It was really, it was Japan dancing. It was really disingenuous. Faye Vincent, who's a bit of a idiot, was going around, "We can't have foreign ownership in America's national pastime," conveniently ignoring the fact that the Montreal Expos and Toronto Blue Jays existed at that time. So, that just called out the lie that it wasn't about foreign ownership of America's game. It was specifically about Japanese ownership of America's game.
Look, the important thing is the Blue Jays don't exist anymore.
The Expos don't exist anymore. Blue Jays still exist.
Shh.
Do you think the Mariners ever had a chance to get anywhere?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They were very competitive in the late 90s and early 2000s. They actually tied the Major League record for most wins in a season in 2001 with 116. And then they kind of scuffled through the division series and then lost in 6 in the ALCS, and that put an end to that. But from 95 to about 2003, they were actually fairly competitive. And they had Griffey for a lot of that time. They had Edgar Martinez the whole time, who was a Hall of Famer.
When did Ichiro
They had Ichiro, of course, 2001.
Okay.
That was his first year in the U.S., and he won the Rookie of the Year and MVP that year when they won the 116 games. But after 2003, they kind of just sank and never came back. I don't think it was... They weren't the best of organizations,
Mm-hmm.
I think having an absentee owner, corporate ownership, and I can only speak for baseball because I'm not a fan of other sports, but I think it's probably as true in other sports as it is in baseball. Corporate ownership almost always ruins teams because there's nobody at the very top that really, really cares. You have a representative owner, but it's not like the CEO of the company. The worst period that the Yankees experienced after they became a dynasty was in the early 70s when they were owned by CBS, because CBS didn't care. So, I think having an absentee corporate owner, the fact he was Japanese didn't matter, just that he was absentee and corporate, I think meant that they were never going to get that far.
There are two fascinating exceptions that Alex and I can talk about during his corporate sports podcast.
You guys should do one of the baseball episodes together. Nate has already pulled you in that you have to do a series now. So
one's
Absolutely.
Football, one's hockey, so you'll have to expand.
Yep.
But I need to Make sure I'm ready when he demands that I come back on, too. All right. The war.
Jesus Christ. This book never ends.
Well,
Can we get scope here at this point?
With 30 chapters. We're at chapter 24.
Okay.
We're getting somewhere. Dale, you read this quote.
Okay, what are we at? Who we got?
Yoshiki Akamoto.
I was tricked into this job.
Good job.
Sega of America had this whole game institute. Our whole strategy was to hold on and wait for the next game from Miyamoto. That's not true.
Yeah, they had plenty of games.
That's right.
In 1990, I remember we read this in the Discord just as a general thing, but so we're going back over this, but whatever. We'll make it fun. In 1990, Sega Enterprises CEO Hayao Nakayama called Greg Fishback, CEO of Acclaim Entertainment, about licensing some of his company's games for use on Genesis. Fully aware that such an agreement would infringe upon the exclusivity clause in Acclaim's licensing agreement with Nintendo, Fishback agreed. Acclaim had already risen to the top tier of Nintendo's third-party partners and published several best-selling games. Fishbach welcomed the opportunity to market his products to a new audience and felt it was time to revisit the terms of the licensing agreement. After careful consideration, Fishbach and co-chairman Jim Skorpowski attempted to contact Nintendo of America President Minoru Arakawa to discuss their decision. When they were informed that Nintendo's executives were in Germany on business, Fishbach and Skorpowski called him and asked for a meeting. Arakawa suggested that they get together for dinner on Sunday evening, so Fishbach made travel arrangements and had his German office make arrangements at a restaurant about 25 minutes outside of Frankfurt. Fishbach and Skorpowski arrived in Frankfurt early Sunday afternoon. They went to Arakawa's hotel, where they met him, his wife, and Howard Lincoln. The five of them could not fit into one cab, so Fishbach and Skorpowski...
Skoropowski.
Skoropowski. Yes.
Yeah, Skoropowski.
I get... Because of how you said it in your episode 5 years ago, I still pronounce it. You said Skorpowski. That's how you said it. Skoropowski. Went into one cab while the Arakawas and Lincoln followed in a second. Have you been to Germany? Narrow 2-lane roads and fast. Everybody drives fast in Germany. That's where the Autobahn is. They used Mercedes 300 series sedans as taxi cabs. Little bright ones, kind of cream in color.
That is very true. I mean, I haven't been to Germany in like almost 20 years now, but they used cream-colored Mercedes were the standard taxi cab in Germany.
We were going to make a left-hand turn into the road that leads to the restaurant. For whatever reason, our taxi driver didn't see an oncoming car. We got broadsided and ended up in a ditch on the side of the road. Howard, Mr. Arakawa, and his wife watched this happen and looked like we were dead. It wasn't a good precursor to the dinner or to conversation. Nothing really happened. We got scratched up a little bit. The car was totaled, but we walked away. We got into their car and still went to dinner because we were men on a mission. We had a really enjoyable meal. Mr. Arakawa was really quite nice about it and understood what we were doing and why we were doing it. When asked about that meeting, Howard Lincoln later remembered it a little differently. Their stories were fairly similar up until the accident, but after the accident, Lincoln remembered a few additional details.
We grabbed Jimmy and we grabbed Greg and put them in our cab and took them to this restaurant. Jimmy had glass in his head, and these guys were in a state of absolute shock, and the only thing they wanted to do was to have a couple of scotches. They forgot what it was they had come to tell us, that they were going to do third-party publishing on Sega. They completely forgot what they had come for. Both Arakawa and I knew what they were getting ready to tell us, but we didn't say anything. The entire night we just sat there, and we just got these smiles on our faces, waiting for them, and then we let them go that night. The next day they called and said, "Oh, we remember now why we had come to see you."
Now, do you have Skorpowski's perspective on this? Skorpowski.
I think we talked about it, yeah. I mean, I'd have to go to the recording, but
Right.
I'm pretty sure I asked about this incident.
Acclaim was not the only company to break ranks. Within the next few years, Konami, Tecmo, Taito, and nearly every one of Nintendo's third-party partners would be publishing games on Genesis. This is a random selection of people. Tecmo and Taito. Okay.
So wait. You get in this not near fatal, but certainly a bad enough accident to leave glass in your hair and leave you in shock. And the business partners with whom you were going to this dinner meeting string you along for the entire night.
If you just want to have some scotch, you let the guy have some scotch, okay?
I'm thinking, maybe I could do it. If that was his perspective, I'm like, you know what? Hey, you're right. No point in trying to drive him to talk business.
Hey, if you like your business partners, you let them do the thing, you know. Two notable holdouts were Capcom, which licensed a few games to Sega for Genesis rather than publishing them, and Squaresoft. Yes, Capcom did eventually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they were not a holdout.
Yeah.
They made a Street Fighter 2 game. Champion
And Mega
Edition.
Man as well.
Yeah. And they were published, not licensed.
And Squaresoft, which maintained exclusivity with Nintendo through the 8 and 16-bit eras. So, I am trying to think through Square's catalog.
Yeah, they didn't do any Sega, but I would say that Enix was a much more notable holdout than Squaresoft.
Well, yeah, but
considering
nobody
the
gives a shit about Enix in the U.S.
I know. I trot this out every time, but I'll trot it out again. Best-selling PS1 game in Japan, Dragon Quest VII. Look it up.
Yeah, Square just has like this super obsessive following in the U.S. that I know way more about Square than I really should. I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I loved both Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest games, but I mean, obviously, no Super NES Dragon Quest games were released, so I mean, Final Fantasy 4 and Final Fantasy 6, 2 and 3, I was there for that.
Yeah, but even the weird smaller games that they published had a lot of traction. From early online commentators where I got my retro game knowledge, and I must unlearn steadily. And I have to accept that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games were more successful than actual good games. So.
Gasp.
In 1992, one of Nintendo's most influential development partners, Rare Limited, the British-based development company founded by Joel Hochberg and the Stamper Brothers. No, we already did this.
I know, but I'm still gonna do my noises.
Completely vanished from the game publishing world. I mean, they never published anything, so...
Yeah. No one knew who Rare was because nobody knew that RC Pro-Am or Iron Sword or Captain Skyhawk were made by a company called Rare.
By some point, they did actually have their names on the boxes and stuff. But I don't know what point that was. I know, like, Slalom didn't have it, so it's not like... Yeah, that early. I think Battletoads, like, it has a Rare thing,
I believe Battletoads may have been the first. Maybe Snake, Rattle, and Roll, I don't know. But I think Battletoads was the first game understood to be by a company called Rare by the general public, even if technically, like, it appeared in the credits before that.
Rare had become a fixture in the Nintendo camp, creating more than 50 NES games. It's no way they did 50.
I don't think they did 50.
Yeah,
they did a ton.
That's ridiculous. 50, no.
But I will go to the Wikipedia or some such. That does seem like a bit many.
Consider that, like, the canonical list of NES games is like 600. They did not do 1/12 of all NES games. That's ridiculous. They did not have enough developers for that.
Yeah, I'm looking list of video games developed by Rare.
That were published by such companies as Acclaim, Iron Sword, Milton Bradley, Marvel Madness, and Nintendo itself, Slalom, and RC Pro-Am.
Shout out to that guy. Remember that guy who read the early
Yeah.
Guys, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46,
What?
47.
Ah,
You were so close, Kent!
I have
You
a
were
feel.
so
I
close!
don't know. Like, so none of those are duplicates. Really?
No.
Eh,
They did a lot of games.
I would have thought it'd been like 30, not 47. Jesus Christ. Anyways, yeah, we I don't know if you were here, Dale, when we looked. We actually found his corrections that he put online. The Zoob.
Oh yeah, no.
Zoob,
That's
yeah.
why I'm giving him. That'd be the kind of thing that maybe he had checked.
With the outset of, well, we'll see eventually. We'll come back at the end of when we did all this and and compare notes again. With the outset of Super NES, Rare created 2 games for the Tradewest, Battletoads and Battlemaniacs, and Battletoads and Double Dragon: The Ultimate Team. Then, having kept up the pace of development of designing 10 games per year, Rare went silent. Joel Hutchberg time. Dale.
Wait, yeah, that's Dale.
Oh no, you gotta take. Hold on. What do we got?
Joel
We got
Hutchberg.
Joel Hotchberg.
We, Joel Hutchberg, Tim Stamper, and Chris Stamper, went to a developers conference at Nintendo of America. We didn't like what we saw. Too many companies were making 8-bit games for a 16-bit machine. We had just visited Nintendo. We went to the Bellevue Red Lion Hotel, and we were talking about company posture and direction. We were busy, and we had a lot of opportunity. But there was a situation taking place that I was not comfortable with, and I'm not sure they were uncomfortable. And I said, let's do something original. Let's pay close attention to what our company's requirements happen to be for moving forward. Those requirements were not taking someone else's product and porting them over from the NES to the Super NES. That was awful, Joel. Forget it. Joel, do you talk like that?
Yeah, and they did not go silent because
Yeah.
even though they only did a couple of Super Nintendo games in '93, they also did games on Game Boy,
Yeah, they
Mega
did
Drive,
tons of Game Boy
Gear,
games.
and one NES game. So they actually did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They did 9 games in 1993. Now, some of those were just ports of the same things, like doing Battletoads and Double Dragon on multiple systems. But they released 9 SKUs in 1993. That is not disappearing.
Yeah, it's a very common trope because they were working in secret on this super advanced stuff for Donkey Kong Country, and it's like, nope, they were still putting out stuff because they needed to keep the lights on and all that.
Yep. In the farm. Keep the lights on the farm.
Yep.
Keep the chickens fed.
As creative people, we didn't want to be a sort of conversion house for major third-party developers. The last few years had been particularly lucrative ones for Rare, and the company had enough money to experiment. As an artist, Tim Stamper was not satisfied with the idea of making games that looked like everybody else's. Chris, his brother, always the technical wizard, suggested that they could develop a new technology that would change the look of games. Chris Stamper was the engineer who discovered the NES's ability to run split-screen games. If he believed that he could create some new graphics technology for the SNES, there was every reason to believe him. The decision was made, and Rare withdrew from actively designing games.
That's just nonsense.
And now we completely jump to
now for something completely different.
Yeah, something I've realized as I've been reading this is that, a lot of people praise Kent for readability, but actually his transitions are absolutely terrible. He just jumps from one thing to the next.
And way to credit the completely wrong person for Street Fighter 2.
In 1982, Konami hired Yoshiki Okamoto, a young college student studying graphics arts in Osaka, to create posters and character art. The standard Japanese practice was to hire students in March or April, shortly after graduation, but Okamoto was given a part-time job in December with the understanding that he would work full-time upon graduating that spring. Looking back on his time at Konami, Okamoto, who did not particularly enjoy video games before joining Konami, would later decide that his employers never intended to hire a graphic artist and that he was tricked into becoming a game designer.
Okamoto is definitely a wild guy that I think also tells some tales.
Yeah, this is bizarre. A few months after he started with the company, Okamoto's boss asked him to try his hand at designing a game. It was supposed to be a driving game, in which players earned a license by driving through streets filled with hazards and bad drivers. Okamoto did not like the idea, since joining Konami had become fascinated with a Namco game called Bosconian, in which the players controlled a spaceship as it flew through minefields, battled enemies, and attacked space stations. Okamoto, a freewheeling individualist with a penchant for speaking his mind and a notoriously short attention span when bored, decided that creating a space game would be more fun than creating a game about earning a driver's license. Without telling his boss, Okamoto began to work on a game that built upon Bosconian rather than the one his boss asked him to do. This was a dangerous decision. Okamoto's boss knew him well enough.
I'm in danger.
Okamoto's boss knew him well enough to be suspicious, and the design team had to simultaneously create code for a driving game that they could show whenever executives came to check up on the game, and at the same time, they made the space combat game. It's
Okamoto,
Japanese.
you're up, Dale.
What? Oh, he is? I thought it was going to be you.
You had him do the quote at the top of the
Oh,
chapter.
right. That's right.
No
He is
way.
now Okamoto. He's been cast. He muted.
All right, take
Then
it
my
on.
boss asked if the driving simulation game was finished and came to check up on me. What I showed him was a totally different concept, and he got really angry. The driving game was supposed to be a real simulation, but when he came, I showed him Time Pilot. I said, why don't we do a location test? He did the location test, and the game got really good reviews, so he forgave me. At that point, my boss said, I told you so.
Okay. Okay, Okamoto. Okamoto designed
It's
only...
safe, Dale. You can unmute now. If you didn't just mute because you had to leave. Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
thought.
mhm.
It's safe now.
Yeah.
It's safe.
Man. That was
The
a
part's
close
been
one.
recast.
Okamoto designed only 2 games during his time at Konami, but both games were considered classics. The first, Time Pilot, was a space combat game in which players flew a futuristic fighter craft through squadrons from different time periods.
I mean, this
Yeah,
is
just
kind of
Bosconian.
pedantic, but it wasn't entirely in space, right? I mean, he was fighting aeroplanes and stuff.
Yeah. It began with waves of World War I era biplanes and went to World War II and eventually progressed through a futuristic battle against UFOs. Gyros, if that's how you pronounce it. Okamoto's second game was a Tempest-like space combat game in which players control a fighter that circles around the outside of the screen, shooting at enemies as they emerge from the middle. Amazingly, having just created 2 of Konami's most successful games of all time, Okamoto was fired.
I asked for a raise, and they said they would give me a really small raise. But I wanted a little more, so I threatened to quit. So the next day, when I came to work, they fired me. So I went to Capcom, because it was the only company that would take me. At that time, Capcom was a really small company. I was the second person they hired for R&D.
In 1984, Capcom, which was located in Osaka, was a fledgling company with only 2 game designers, Yoshiki Okamoto and Tokoro Fujiwara.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Funamizu was there before Okamoto, wasn't he? I don't know. He may not have been. I mean, I don't know
How do you
that
spell
well
it?
enough to say it's there.
Because I remember we brought this up last time we read this chapter.
Let me. I'm looking. Funamizu. So Funamizu. Noritaka Funamizu. Because I thought he was there before Okamoto.
If I recall, when we looked this up, we concluded that he was, but I can't recall exactly what the.
Well, no, he said when he
was.
joined Capcom, he befriended fellow Capcom designer Yoshiki Okamoto. So maybe not.
Okay.
Maybe he was the third. Maybe that was the order. Was Fujiwara, and then Okamoto, and then Funamizu. But they were the original three. And Funamizu's game, I think, came out first, but that doesn't mean he was like there first.
Both men had seemingly endless talent and energy. Yeah, good to get on those negative traits there, Kent. A competition formed between them, and that competition created enough synergy to make Capcom a leading force in video games. Yeah, it was just that. Nothing else. Okamoto created a couple of little-known games after arriving at Capcom, then designed 1942 a top-scrolling flight game in which players controlled an American fighter flying a World War II mission over the Pacific Theater. Then he followed up with a similar game called 1943. Okamoto's next few games did not do well, as Okamoto struggled to come up with new ideas. Fujiwara created such Capcom classics as Commando and Ghosts and Goblins. Okamoto became worried about his job. He created a soft porn version of Mahjong, a tile game that is popular in Asia, but in the meantime he needed a special project, something big. The answer came when another Osaka-based game designer, the game company Taito. While looking at competitors' games, Okamoto ran across Double Dragon 2: The Revenge, and realized with some of Capcom's newer technology, he would be able to improve upon this style of the game. Double Dragon 2...
I don't think... I mean, Okamoto, was his production group, but I'm pretty sure Okamoto didn't have anything to do with the genesis of Final Fight.
Double Dragon was a two-dimensional, side-scrolling gang-fighting game in which players walked along streets, fighting off muggers of all types. It featured simplistic 3-button combat controls, with one button for attacking enemies to the left, one for attacking to the right, and one for jumping. One problem with the game was its antiquated graphics. The combatants looked short and childishly scrawled. Capcom's research and development engineers had recently come up with a new and more powerful hardware that could make for more realistic-looking characters and backgrounds. The end product was a game called Final Fight. Okamoto did not design Final Fight. By the time he began to work on the project, he had already been promoted to producer.
Yeah, but I don't think he was even, like, the one that was like, we should do this. I mean,
With its simpler controls and a more sophisticated graphics, Final Fight improved upon the Double Dragon formula.
Hey, whoa. I just want to point out, he talked about how Double Dragon 2 had simplistic combat, and then called this one to have simpler controls. I mean, it is simpler because you don't have to do different buttons for back and front, but I just think that's kind of a weird juxtaposition.
Double Dragon has rigid combat, let's say that way.
Yeah, that's true.
Final Fight is much quicker.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, I definitely gravitated towards Final Fight.
I never had the choice, so... Final Fight Golden Axe. And I had 1942 on the first floor. Xevious. And I can't remember what else.
Funnily enough, I don't think my arcade had Double Dragon 2, but it did have an original Double Dragon cabinet. And I remember that, and I remember the Bad Dudes cabinet, and then, Final Fight. And then later Turtles. Turtles came a little later.
Instead of having 3 buttons and a joystick, Okamoto's game had only attack and jump buttons. Players could execute several moves as they fought off attackers, but they did not have to master these moves to have fun with the game. The art was the biggest improvement. The characters in Final Fight looked cartoonish and moved stiffly, but they had human proportions and detailed faces. One of the enemies was a giant who looked and fought like Andre the Giant, a real-life professional wrestler. I mean, he wasn't giant compared to, like, Haggard. He was the same size.
Yeah. And they also took a lot of their inspiration from Streets of Fire, almost certainly. Yasuda denied it when he was interviewed by Retro Gamer. They were like, "Did you base stuff on Streets of Fire?" And then he was like, "Let me Google that." And he was like, "I Googled it, and no, I don't know that movie." And it's like, sure you don't. Well, I mean, maybe he didn't. Maybe the artists and whatnot, Obviously, he was only one member of the team, so...
Released in 1989, Final Fight was one of Capcom's most successful games to date, but it was Okamoto's next game that made him famous.
It wasn't his game at all. I mean, that's like saying Metroid was Gunpei Yokoi's game. I mean, it's ludicrous.
So let's just put that as a blanket statement there. Okamoto's next project was a sequel to a 1987 game called Street Fighter, or Fighting Street if you were on the TurboGrafx. Because
Never heard of it.
The original Street Fighter was a one-on-one martial arts fighting game, as Okamoto's team members created their vision of what a Street Fighter game should be. They decided to include 3 elements from that game: secret moves that allowed players to throw fireballs, a character named Ken, and a character named Ryu.
The sales division said that we needed to make another Street Fighter. They'd been asking for it for a long time. At one of the trade shows, Final Fight was shown with the title of Street Fighter 2, actually Street Fighter 89, but that's okay. But all the operators said, "Hey, that's not Street Fighter!" Originally, I wanted to change all the characters. But some of the players still liked Ryu and Ken.
Why? Why did they like them? Explain this.
Hadouken.
Yeah, but why do you like the characters?
Hadouken. Yeah, I don't know why.
Sure, you can.
Both of them. Yeah.
It took 10 months to complete Street Fighter II: The World Warrior. I'm sure that we could actually answer this, given all the documents they dug up on Street Fighter II Anniversary Collection.
Yep.
Or Street Fighter Anniversary Collection, because I think it is more than Street Fighter II.
Right.
I should buy that at some point.
Mm.
Not that I'm particularly interested in playing Street Fighter, but I just want to look at all the extras.
Yes.
The game was a major undertaking, and several artists worked on each of the fighters. The team created multiple hidden moves for each of the 8 main characters in the game. Okamoto personally believed that this game would be just as successful as Final Fight, but once the concepts and art were complete and the fate of the game was in the hands of the programmers, he became nervous. Restless by nature, he found it impossible to sit around the office waiting to see the final results, so he often went to play baseball to distract himself. Oh, what a good manager. What a good, fantastic boss.
That's right.
You just like run off to play. You need like a whole bunch of people. Street pickup baseball somewhere? Is that
in Osaka.
makes sense.
I imagine he went to the batting cages and Kent just said it very stupidly.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
These were nervous times for Okamoto, but he could still skip work and go to the batting cages.
That's right.
Never mind.
He had committed a great deal of time and resources to Street Fighter II. I mean, that much is true.
Yes.
Like Final Fight before it, Street Fighter II brought marked improvement to an already existing genre. Not only did it have the same clean, ornately designed, yet somewhat cartoony look that distinguished Final Fight, it also had a colorful cast of international brawlers. Along with returning martial artist Ryu and Ken, it featured 10 other fighters, including a fire-spitting Hindu mystic, a lumbering sumo wrestler, and a one-eyed kickboxer. Each character has unique abilities and special moves. Okamoto was well aware of the arcade prestige given to players who mastered hidden moves in difficult games, and he wanted to use that prestige to his game's advantage. The game was a major international success. The combination of brutal action, hidden moves, humorous characters, and bright graphics appealed to players all over the world. Released in 1991, Street Fighter II brought much-needed business to the dwindling American arcade industry.
Nope. Arcade industry peaked in 1990 and continued to decline every year that Street Fighter II was around.
But imagine without it. It would have declined way, way worse.
Probably. But really, and we talked about this before, but like the games like Street Fighter II, Mortal Kombat, Daytona, like they were more popular than any individual game had been in a long time. But they didn't increase the overall market, it just became an even more hits-driven industry. So the industry as a whole kept declining, making less money, but a small number of games were taking a larger percentage of the money.
was.
That's all.
This was the first game since the mid 1980s to actually attracted players to arcades. More important, arcade owners bought multiple Street Fighter II machines and set them up in rows, the way they used to set up Pac-Man machines a decade earlier. Capcom will not release the final numbers, but there are some outsiders who have estimated more than 60,000 Street Fighter II arcade machines were sold worldwide.
A lot more. The estimates I've seen are way higher than that if you're talking worldwide. And obviously some of that is variance and stuff, but not entirely. 60,000 is low.
Not 60 million. It just did
Yes.
that for whatever reason.
60 million would be high.
According to a former Capcom spokesperson, who apparently must remain anonymous, the arcade version of Street Fighter II earned more money than the movie Jurassic Park made in box office receipts. Yeah, skeptical of that, but...
Probably a press release without someone identified, and that's what Kent's using.
Street Fighter II was even more successful as a game cartridge for Super Nintendo. Capcom released it exclusively for the 16-bit Nintendo console and went on to sell more than 2 million copies of the game.
Way more. We do have Capcom's official
Yeah.
figures on that when it was 6 million.
Making it the first third-party hit for the Super Nintendo. In 1992, Genesis started to pull away in sales, having the only home version of Street Fighter II gave Nintendo a needed edge.
Yeah, for that year they did.
Yeah.
The next year that wasn't the case anymore. Was Genesis ever as advanced a machine as Super NES? Technically, no. I thought we were able to do better software than they were.
You know nothing, Tom. Get out of here.
Right. They both are good machines, but I think the big advantage we had was we initially were able to do better software, and it took them a long time to get up to speed on doing a good job on their software, because, Super Mario World was just El Stinko.
Hey,
And then that Legend of Zelda Link to the, Past was it called? Barely
how about
remember it.
ActRaiser? Oh, what the hell is that? You play as a baby cherub.
That's right.
That's the whole
right.
game. And Super Mario Kart?
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of game that is.
Yeah. Sounds lame.
Nintendo sold 3.4 million Super NES consoles in 1991. That's higher than the figure you said before.
Yes, and higher than a figure I've seen anywhere
Yeah, I'm gonna call that one out.
else.
I feel like he meant to say 1992, but
But then he has a long-lasting record for first-year sales of a new game hardware, so...
well, maybe he's saying first full year.
Well,
Maybe
yeah,
that's
that's
what I
true. So that maybe that is supposed to be 1992. Yeah, maybe.
This gave Nintendo a good share of the market, but with a one-year lead and more sales overall in 1991, Genesis continued to have the larger 16-bit install base in the United States. Genesis never amounts to a significant install base in Japan. Sega Enterprises CEO Hayao Nakayama may not have allowed Tom Kalinske to drop the price or change the game that came with...
May have
allowed Tom Kalinske to drop the price or change the name that came with the console, but he had no intention of following Kalinske's example. The Mega Drive sales would increase briefly with major events such as the release of the new Sonic the Hedgehog game. Sega remained a distant third behind
Well, of
NEC
course they didn't
and-
change the game that came with the console, because they don't bundle games with consoles in Japan!
Sega remained a distant third behind NEC and Nintendo throughout the 16-bit generation. No, they overtook NEC at some point. I'm
pretty
certain
sure.
of that, yeah.
I would need to bring forth... I need to bring forth the graph if I can find it.
I'm pretty
see if
certain
I-
that's true.
Yeah, I
It's
just
Tom.
need to... I know, but I need to find the graph first. If it takes too long, I'll stop. But, just be... Because... Here we go. I think this is it. If this isn't it, I will just
Commit
go read
seppuku.
Tom. But I think this is it. No, I will just go read Tom. But I think I've got the right thing here. There it is. Yeah, so it, according to this, which is inexact because it is a line graph and, you know, not unit sales, it looks like they barely outsold the TurboGrafx in 93. We're kind of in a dead heat in 94, and then definitely outsold the TurboGrafx in 95, but I mean, the TurboGrafx was virtually non-existent that year, so that's not saying much. So, yeah, I think they probably did barely outsell them, but yeah, it was... They never actually got that close except in 93 and 94. Interesting.
Alright, Tom.
Alrighty. They always claim that there was a time after the launch when they pulled ahead of us, but our research said that there wasn't. They had a phenomenal initial launch. If you mean in terms of a month, I'm sure there was a month when they outsold us. You know, I'm sure they outsold us for a few months.
Dale, can we get you for Peter Main?
Or is he gone?
He might have disappeared into the great white north.
I think he's gone this time for real.
Alright. The fact is that the home video game market is made up of 3 categories, and having a good year in one category does not give you the right to claim overall superiority. And you can feel the snippiness.
We sold Game Boys.
I mean, you guys were making money. You could put your hat on that.
If you'd like to air these concerns further, Peter Main, talk to me.
You see, we both
I will give you a platform.
Going into 1992, Sega had several advantages over Nintendo, including much lower sales price and a larger library of games. Nintendo was slow in getting games to market, and some of the earlier SNES games included UN Squadron and Bill Lambier's.
Yeah, Bill Lambier's.
The Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball were not particularly fun. What? UN Squadron wasn't
UN
fun?
Squadron was awesome, man. I mean, I'll give him the Combat Basketball game.
I never played that, but I've definitely played a little UN Squadron.
Yeah, UN Squadron's a solid shoot 'em up.
It has like a cool buy weapon RPG system.
Weapon upgrade system. Yep, it sure does.
There were too many golf games early on, and the anticipated.
Okay, I'm going. I just a statement like that needs to be to the list of Super NES games, because a claim like that needs to be checked out. We cannot let that one just lie there in the dirt, you know.
Let us
So
see.
I'm unreleased. Yes, when you sort by US, it starts with all the unreleased.
I know,
stuff,
but then.
Oh no, that's what I'm doing too. I'm just complaining about it. Unreleased. Okay. So, how many golf games am I going to see? How's Hole-in-One Golf? That's one. True Golf Classics. That's 2. PGA Tour Golf came out in the first part of 92. So that's... Okay, and there's True Golf Classics. I am going to concede this point.
Yeah.
That is an awful lot of golf. Jack Nicklaus Golf.
Yeah, in the first 2 years, yeah.
There were
4
like
or 5 golf games.
Golf games in the first calendar year, or not calendar year, the first like full year, full year on the market in the US. There were like 5 golf games, and that's kind of ludicrous. So I'm gonna give that one to Kent. That's fair.
There we go. Finally, an
But it
observation.
had to be checked. It had to be
Yes.
checked.
And the anticipated third-party titles, such as Konami's Contra 3 The Alien Wars, were slow in coming. When did that come?
That's what we're gonna find out right now. I'm still here.
1992? April? That's not too far out.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that terribly too far out, personally. But
Sega had 10 games for every game on the Super NES, because they've been around longer. That's just the way it works.
Yeah.
And Sega's internally produced titles were getting better and better.
Then why were the Sonic games selling worse and worse?
Sega had a long line of arcade hits to draw from, and several license contracts with Disney, as well as sports stars Joe Montana and David Robinson. What's David Robinson from?
Basketball.
Basketball.
Yeah.
Capcom may have released only a Super NES version of Final Fight, but one of Sega's internal development teams created Streets of Rage, a similar side-scrolling gang-fighting game with bigger levels, tougher enemies, and an amazing soundtrack. Yes,
I will never dispute that the Streets of Rage series was way better than the Super NES Final Fight games. That is true statement.
Shout out to my man Koshiro.
Oh yeah.
He's a Koshiro. He's good. I mean, I don't generally my taste is less in that kind of techno-y direction, but he does good.
Mm-hmm.
Not only were there more games for Genesis, but Sega also continued to produce titles at a faster pace, to their detriment, really.
Right.
The market seemed to stop and take note every time Shigeru Miyamoto released a Mario or Zelda game. Not that they knew who he was, but but those games generally arrived at a rate of 1 per year. Oh.
I would say probably less than that. Well, maybe Mario and Zelda together. It's 1 per year.
Yeah. I mean, there's only one Zelda game on the SNES, and it's
right. But Mario
World,
and
then Yoshi's Island.
And Mario Kart, I guess, counts. I don't know. Not that Miyamoto did that game, but you know what I mean.
Sega released several anticipated games, like Streets of Rage and Toe Jam and Earl throughout the year. Toe Jam and Earl was an anticipated game.
The greatest retro gamer article ever is the making of article of Toe Jam and Earl, where Greg Johnson just decided to tell them all the most ridiculous, stupid bullshit, and Retro Gamer printed all of it. And it's total BS. It's wonderful.
These games may not have been as widely available as a Mario game, but
widely anticipated
as a Mario game, but they often had an edgy irreverence that helped them shape the way people perceived Sega. More important, they gave Genesis owners something to look forward to buying in their near future, while Super Nintendo owners had to wait for the Christmas season.
Except Contra 3 came out in April.
Yeah.
Who is this?
It's
Tom again, or
no? Terry.
No,
I'll do this because you're doing Tom after this.
Yeah, that's fine.
Every week, we would have an executive review of the games we had in progress, and the meeting would involve anybody who wanted to join. Marketing, manufacturing executives would be there, producers, etc. We would review the games in a conference room that was called the Looney Bin. It was kind of funny. When you watch the television commercials, they're very irreverent, very cutting edge, and this attitude pervades throughout the entire company. When we had these meetings with Tom Kalinske and all the executive VPs in the room, you could say anything you wanted to. It was very interesting because people were swearing in the meetings and making off-color remarks, but it was all accepted. That was just part of the company culture, and people could say anything about the game. They said things like, that thing really sucked, or that character really blows. And the executives were right there, taking it all in and very serious about it. Terry Huang, a former public relations manager, Sega of America. Don't know if anyone's interviewed him since.
That's one thing. Since Kent was in the press, he did interview more PR people than your typical book does, because those are the people Kent knew from being press.
No, Ken should probably interview him at some point.
Yeah. Yes.
Sega's advertising continued to evolve as well. Oh yeah, and since we're on that point, I remember, like, Ken has said that like he dug Tom Kalinske up from the vestiges of history, but you know he's in Kent.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, you were at that panel. And he also says he was the only person to talk to Tom Pettit before he died. So
Yes. No.
No.
I talked to him a decade before you talked to him.
Mm-hmm. While Nintendo's advertisements see stuck in a Mario-esque world of cute images appealing to preteen kids, Sega turned it to a noisy underground image. Sega commercials always ended with the Sega Scream, where some character screamed "Sega!" into the camera. I mean,
Yeah.
I have to. It's
I
just
know. It's okay.
yes.
It's allowed.
This new marketing approach, combined with an emphasis on sports games, Sonic the Hedgehog, and new lines of edgy games, changed some basic market demographics. Sega was becoming cool to high school kids, and the cooler Sega became, the less people were ready to admit that they liked Nintendo. When a Sony marketing team ran focus groups, they found that teenage boys who owned a Super Nintendo console would not admit it.
I saw that our primary audience was over 18 years of age. Nintendo tended to focus on younger kids. We attempted to focus on an older crowd. 40% of our business is over 18 years old. Teenage and college-age kids have adopted the Sega Screen. I was backstage at a rap concert, and I watched rappers who did not know who I was meet each other with the Sega Screen.
Over 18? Come on, Tom.
Yeah.
Don't be doing that. Don't be pulling a Bill White right now. Come on.
Yeah, Sony's the one that edged that demographic out.
As the year progressed, Nintendo sought to eliminate one of Sega's advantages by lowering the price of the Super Nintendo console from $179 to $149. Nintendo of America Vice President of Marketing Peter Main would later comment that he wished they had gone with the $149 price tag from the start. "I could have sold an extra million," said Main. Sega responded to the Nintendo price drop by reducing the price of the Genesis to $129. According to the TRST data, sales information recorded by the industry tracking NPD group, Nintendo sold 5.6 million Super Nintendo consoles in 1992. So he didn't mess up the date. He just got another number for 1991.
Yes, just because he could.
Edging out Sega by 10%. Sega still had a larger install base and sold more software, but the momentum seemed to be moving in Nintendo's direction. And that completely contradicts what Kalinske said earlier. No, there's no way that they...
Yeah. First, the MPD group has pretty much disavowed all of its numbers before like 94 or 95, something like 95, I think it is.
Yeah.
So...
As Nintendo and Sega squared off for top honors in the 16-bit arena, NEC officially pulled out of the market, turning the sales of the TurboGrafx over to a newly created company called Turbo Technologies Inc. that it formed with Hudson Soft. It's a weird that we're still overseeing it and we're still our people, but we're just I have no idea why they did that. I guess
I'm sure it was for tax or reporting reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, financial stuff.
The writing was on the wall for the TurboGrafx and had been since before the release of the Super Nintendo. The system had developed a cult following, but it would never have a genuine hit game in the United States. Even Bonk, its mascot game, was almost unknown to the general consumer, by comparison.
I think that's probably incorrect, because Bonk was pretty present in commercials and whatnot. Like, I knew who Bonk was, and I never read any game magazines other than Nintendo Power. I mean, I knew nothing about the TurboGrafx except what I saw on television, and I knew what Bonk was. So I'm not calling that an error, but I think Bonk was known even if nothing else was.
By comparison, a 1993 study showed that more American kids recognize Mario and Sonic than Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, because at that period of time, Mickey Mouse had been in virtually nothing since 1983. I mean, why would kids be familiar with Mickey Mouse at that point? I mean, I that always gets trotted out, and it's like, Mickey Mouse was in a down time period then.
Turbo Technologies continued marketing various versions of the TurboGrafx into 1994, then closed shop as Atari and 3DO entered the market.
Yeah, now we're just casually throwing 3DO out there. And now we footnote the entire Neo Geo experience.
It should be noted that NEC was not the only straggler in the market at the time. SNK, a leading arcade company, released a 24-bit console called Neo Geo in 1990. Neo Geo was a name familiar to arcade goers, as SNK's coin-operated Neo Geo was popular with arcade owners. Neo Geo was expensive. The base unit, which came with only a controller, sold for $399, $200 more than the Super NES. The full set, which included a game and 2 controllers, sold for $599, and additional cartridges, which had the exact same code as the arcade game, routinely sold for $200. I mean, you can kind of evaluate that from, well,
and
I guess
also, the Neo Geo was not a 24-bit system. It had a 68,000 Motorola processor. The graphics, the GPU bus was 24-bit. But we don't bit systems by their GPU.
I never really knew. Like, I just kind of assumed that was, okay, it's correct, but no, yeah. Because if you did it by a GPU, like, you know, people wouldn't complain about the Jaguar if they went by the graphics processor, because the Blitter was 64 on the Jaguar.
Exactly, yeah, no, the CPU is just a Motorola 68,000.
And of course, the thing about a Motorola 68,000 is that it's 16/32-bit, actually.
Well, yeah, but, exactly. If you have the bus that can handle 32-bit. I'm not sure if Neo Geo had a 32-bit bus or not.
I mean, they would have touted that if they did, but just like, if we're just going by what the chip is capable of,
right, exactly,
then it's a 32-bit system. Every Motorola system is 32-bit, but we don't talk about it that way.
Exactly.
The ROM race. In a way, it may have been the oddest race in video game history. Sega and Nintendo began developing devices for a new storage format called CD-ROM and raced to deliver CD-ROM peripherals to retail.
Why is that odd when like everyone was saying that CD-ROM was going to be the immediate future of everything? I mean, in hindsight, it looks dumb, but you can understand why all the console companies were going CD at the time.
Yeah, I mean, by the time Kent was writing this book, every PC in the world had a CD player on it, so like, you know, CD drive.
They were really, I think they were probably a little bit afraid of like the CDI and the CD TV and all of that stuff. I mean, they needn't have been, but there was a threat to them coming to the living room in the form of the CD multimedia machines that they were afraid were going to have real mainstream appeal because of the educational factor.
And I don't know, like, it raced, like, Sega was just kind of doing its own thing, and they got it out well before Nintendo even announced that they were working on it.
They raced at the speed of a Sega CD player.
1x. In truth, CD-ROM was anything but new. Computer companies have been using them as a method of mass storage for years prior to Nintendo and Sega making their discoveries, and NEC beat them by 2 years with the TurboGrafx CD. Who was using CDs for mass storage in professional computer applications?
Right. I mean, you know, I think it was probably around 86 or so that like the idea of CD was really starting to pick up in PC circles, but that doesn't mean people like had them.
Yeah. Sega announced plans for the Mega CD, the Japanese version of the CD-ROM drive, in early 1991. Yeah, so it was already out. So yeah. No, it comes out in 91. Yeah.
This chapter goes on for like 20 years.
The plan was to release the unit in Japan by late 1991, then in the United States the following year. Around Sega of America, the general reaction to the Mega CD announcement was euphoric.
Oh my.
The drive was seen as a way of turning the technological tables in Sega's favor and driving yet another nail into Nintendo's coffin.
Another nail in the coffin.
If that was an intentional reference, then it would be clever, but I don't know.
Yeah, but we know it wasn't.
Sega of Japan and its partner on the project, Sony. What?
No.
No?
Sega partnered with JVC on its CD-ROM device. He's getting confused because Sony ImageSoft made a deal to do CD software on the Sega CD, but Sony did not do the hardware. That was Japan Victor.
And design work shutting out Sega of America executives until the project was complete. Not that they needed to know. It's just like what?
Right.
I mean,
Like,
I guess they would have preferred to.
Were they given the Genesis before the Genesis was complete?
Yeah, maybe they would have preferred, like to have like a dev kit or something. Maybe that's what they mean, but I don't know.
Right.
As late as mid-1991, Japanese executives continued to keep the unit hidden from Sega of America, finally sending a crippled dummy drive to the US that summer to show them what it looked like. Michael left. When you work at a multinational company, there are things that go well and things that don't. They didn't want to send us working Sega CD units. What is this? Footnote. Sega CD was named... Okay, did not need to know. Thank you.
Oh, good lord. I think we got that. I think we were right there with Latham without your help, Kent.
They wanted to send...
For all I know, his editor made him put that in. I mean, that might not be fair to Kent.
They wanted to send us dummies and not send us working CD units until the last minute because they were concerned about what we would do with it if I would leak it out. If it would leak out. It was very frustrating. Okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
Somewhat understandable.
Oh, yeah.
Somehow they had sent some ROMs, or we had procured some ROMs somehow, and we had a dummy unit that was missing its ROM. I always liked to work late into the night, and so did Shinobu Toyota. So it was like 1 a.m, and he came to me with this chip with the Sega CD and the ROMs and said, "Can you actually make this work?" What did it say? Shinobu Toyota was vice president of licensing at Sega of America, and the executive worked most closely with Japan. Yeah.
But we already knew that!
Yeah, you introduced him earlier. I thought, yeah, I probably could. So I put the chip in. There were a couple of things that were unhooked, but we fixed it and plugged it in. So Shinobu and I were the first people in the US to see the Sega CD boot up. Our take on it was one of wonder from the product development side, but as soon as we started to program for it, I think the wonder went away quickly. It was literally a mass storage extension of the Genesis. It wasn't a new system. And that was always the confusion internally. The internal people believed it to be a completely new system with new abilities. It did have these small expansion abilities, but they were not significant. I'm glad that I delivered that well.
Yes. No, that was good. I gotta check on this though.
Okay.
We've been letting this go. If I could type, I could check on it. Okay, so Mega CD does have a hyphen, unlike Mega Drive. I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, the Mega CD, which would arrive in the United States in 1992 as Sega CD. So, like...
Yeah.
He
should have put a footnote here saying, please see the earlier footnote.
Had a more powerful processor and handled more colors than the Genesis processor. The single-speed CD-ROM drive was meant only to expand the size of games. Genesis and Super NES cartridges generally ranged in size from 8 to 16 megabits, but a single CD-ROM could hold 640 megabytes, 320 times more data. Why do you mix these things? I hate megabits. Why does megabits exist?
I hate it too, but I think he mixes them because the companies mixed them.
I know, but you should know the conversion rate of bits to bytes.
Yeah.
With over 600 megabytes of storage, Sega CD could play games with digitized video. Unfortunately, yes, this is true. Before the company could launch the new medium, however, Sega would need games to support it. As luck would have it, several suitable games already existed.
Well, for a given definition of suitable.
Suitable, yes. Nintendo also announced plans to manufacture a CD-ROM drive. Like Sega, Nintendo turned to Sony Corporation as a partner.
Or rather, unlike Sega.
Yeah. At the Winter Consumer Electronics Show in January 1992, Nintendo claimed that it can manufacture and distribute the drive within the year. But they weren't talking about the Sony drive at that point. What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't the big announcement in June 91?
Yeah,
the big backstab announcement, I mean?
Yeah, but they're like, so I think this may have been something that they claimed that they could get the drive within the year at the January 1992 CES, but he is completely mixing up what the fuck is going on right now.
Yeah.
The problem was that Sony was proving to be a very dangerous partner. Or maybe it wasn't 91 because they didn't announce it then.
Yeah.
Sony executives have already revealed plans to release their own CD-based video game system called the PlayStation. What? What is this?
No, it was
not a system.
Yeah, this is getting dangerous.
Yeah.
Kent is proving to be a very dangerous historian.
This is the best way I could think to correct this, because there's just so many angles I could go at this from.
Yeah.
And Nintendo executives wondered about the wisdom of giving them access to Nintendo's system by having Sony make a Super Nintendo compatible CD drive. Well, it wasn't Super Nintendo.
It wasn't about giving them access to the system. It was about that they didn't think they had the software rights properly cared for. They were afraid of Sony owning software. They weren't afraid of the access. I mean, they were already making the audio chip in the Super NES. I mean, we're far past the point of access to the hardware being a concern.
After reconsidering the situation, Nintendo executives allowed Sony to announce plans for their drive at the Consumer Electronics Show, then appear the next day to say that they had struck up a deal with Philips NV, the Dutch conglomerate, instead. No, I don't think it was the next day. I think it was like the same day or something.
No, I think it was the next day. But of course, he makes it sound like it was a trap when Sony knew what Nintendo was going to announce. They just went ahead and announced theirs anyway because they had a contract, and if they got it out in public, then it would be harder for Nintendo to actually walk away. It was all posturing.
Sony executives were shut out and humiliated. Ken Kutaragi, the young engineer whom Sony had placed at the head of the Nintendo project, did he actually had the SNES CD add-on? I'm not actually sure if he did.
He was part of it, but I just want to say that, I mean, I guess there's different ways you can use the term young, but Kutaragi was born in 1950. He was 41 years old. I mean, I'd like to think that's still young, but it seems kind of odd. Young, you picture a go-getter in their 20s or early 30s.
A Mark Turney.
Yeah, exactly.
Though he's old now.
I mean, he'd been with Sony since the 70s, you know? I mean, he wasn't this untested kid.
Went to Sony CEO Norio Oga to plead for permission to keep the PlayStation project alive, stating the system could be built into a standalone unit. He proposed looking ahead to the next generation of game hardware and creating something that would immediately render Super Nintendo obsolete. Having just been humiliated by Nintendo, Oga accepted Kukuragi's suggestion and brought it to the company board. The general reaction was unfavorable. Nintendo clearly had too much control over the market, and attempting to break in would be too risky. The internal battle ensued, and Oga almost alone in his support of the venture. In the end, he decided to gamble on Kutaragi and approve the project.
Do it.
You beat me. As Kutaragi quietly started work on his project. Well, not quietly within Sony, but...
Yeah.
Nintendo executives began looking for suitable games. One of the first projects to catch their eye was The Seventh Guest, a breakthrough puzzle game. That was being developed by a Medford, Oregon company called Trilobite.
We got a call one day from a guy working with Dom James's group at Nintendo. They were trying to find games that would be appropriate for their CD-ROM drive that was eventually going to happen. And he gave me a call and said, "Do you have any CD-ROM titles that you're working on that we should have a look at?" I said, "Oh wow, I've got something that you've got to see. It's called The Seventh Guest." So he flew down, probably about a week and a half later, and was given the tour of the company and shown the product. He said that he was very excited. Within a couple of days later, his boss, Don James, came down and took a look, and from there they started negotiating a deal to purchase the rights to The Seventh Guest for the Nintendo CD-ROM player. A deal was eventually struck, and Nintendo got all CD-ROM game console rights to the product, and Virgin was paid, I believe, $1 million up front.
Most ever paid for a bad game. Nintendo never released its CD-ROM drive.
C-E period T period.
I know there were others too.
Yeah, I know, but I just had to say that.
Yes. Nintendo first announced delays and then claimed that the unit would be ready by August 1993. Behind the scenes, Nintendo was slowly closing down the project. By 1995, Nintendo would be the only major video game company that did not have a CD.
Is this chapter a third of the book all by itself?
We keep going and going. Let's see how far we go. Oh, man.
Oh my
Oh yeah, we
God.
have to get through id in this chapter.
Oh my God. I mean, I'm up for it, but it's just like, oh my God.
The birth of digital pictures. With the collapse of the Nemo project, which he had begun in conjunction with Hasbro, Tom Zito had placed his live-action video games, along with office equipment and other supplies, in a Rhode Island warehouse and largely forgotten about them. What he did not know was that Sega and Nintendo had a new medium with enough storage space to handle his games, and that a desperate search for games with digital video was underway. Ken Melville was working at this company that had happened to have a prototype copy of Sewer Shark in its original version on videotape. So he calls me up and says, "The weirdest thing happened today. Mickey Shuloff and Peter Goober. Gubber? I don't know.
I think it's probably Goober.
Goober were in here the other day. They saw Sewer Shark. They were blown away by it. I think they're trying to buy this company because they believe this company owns Sewer Shark and has the technology to do products like Sewer Shark." Now, Goober was the head of Columbia Pictures, which was owned by Sony, and Shuloff was the chairman of Sony USA. It just happened that my younger brother, Bob Zito, was Mickey Shuloff's PR guy. So I called my brother on the phone and told him the story, and he said, "That doesn't sound at all possible." "I really can't believe that's true," he said. "I'm gonna be with Mickey 2 weeks from now. If the opportunity comes up, I'll ask him. I'll get back to you." About 2 hours later, my phone rang, and it was my brother. He said, "Is this thing set in sewers?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you shoot rats and bats?" I said, "Yeah." "And you own the rights to this?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I think you better take a red-eye to New York." As Nemo collapsed, Zito had purchased the rights to the video-based games that he had helped create for it, thinking that they might someday be usable. Yes, you said that in the previous paragraph above. Thank you. With clear rights of ownership in hand, he met with Shuloff, who signed him up to create games for the Nintendo PlayStation. Just like baseball, 2 words.
That's right.
Zito then formed a company called Digital Pictures. He spent the next year working 2 games that had been created for Nemo, Night Trap and Sewer Shark, so that they would run on the ill-fated PlayStation. When the Sony-Nintendo partnership fell apart, Zito turned to Sega. I'm going to check real quick, because I always have the California Business Search up, to see when Digital Pictures was created.
Ah, yes.
1991, so yeah, that tracks.
Very good.
You win this time, Zito. So then, in the meantime, Sony had gone off and started with a PlayStation of its own, and we started doing all this stuff for Sega CD, and the rest, as they say, is history. And meanwhile, I met I met Shinobu Toyota at Sega and was aware that Sega was coming out with a CD system. When Sony went away, we sort of changed the focus of our development afterwards and started doing stuff for Sega CD rather than Sony. The incredible irony of it was that the video we plugged into the Super Nintendo was just terrific because the Super Nintendo could display 256 colors at once. The Sega CD could only put 32 colors at a time, so you had this horrible grainy look to the images. I think it was more than 32. I know that they did have to compress the color depth, but I can't recall what it is.
Yeah.
I think it was more than 32 though.
That's a good question that we can actually answer. Yeah, 61 colors on screen.
All right, I'm putting that as a correction then. I know it was compressed from the standard of what you could do. Because CD was garbage. But, you know.
Oh, wait, Sega CD. I was looking at Genesis. I wasn't looking at Sega CD. Sorry, that was my bad. Let's look at Sega CD. Sorry about that.
This quote is on the Wikipedia page, but that is not what I'm looking for.
Right.
Oh, come on, you don't have it on Wikipedia?
Yeah. No. They have the quote, and then it corrects the quote immediately afterwards. So the system was able to put up 64 colors at one time. Okay.
Nice. Thank you, Wikipedia people. You have helped us for once.
Yay.
And never
you win
again.
This round. You win this round, Wikipedia.
Sega CD was released in the United States on October 15th, 1992. I'm not sure that they had a specific release date on that, but whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe they did. Maybe they, after Sonic 2, they were just like, everything has a release date. It retailed for 200... Oh.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the date given on Wikipedia, but in this case, I wouldn't necessarily trust it. So.
Make of it what you will. It retailed for $299, and Zeta's game Sewer Shark came packed
Oh,
in
look,
the box.
the source for the release date is Kent Stephen L. 2001, The Ultimate History of Video Games.
All right, so just because of that, I'm going to... Launch. Question. Look it up
Not
later.
92, not 91.
92. Yeah. I doubt this now.
Yeah, I also doubt it. I press X.
And Zeto's game
vigorously.
Sewer Shark came packed in the box. Did it actually come packed in with the game?
I believe
Okay.
Sewer Shark did come packed in. But yeah. Yep, Sega packs Sewer Shark with new Sega CD. This site can't. They cite GamePro.
Okay.
So.
Slightly more reliable.
Yeah. Exactly.
Digital Pictures became one of Sega's most important partners, creating several original games for Sega CD, unfortunately.
And then Acclaim thought it would be a good idea to buy them. And I don't know why.
Digital Pictures?
Yeah.
And they didn't actually, though. Did they?
Yeah.
Did they buy them? I don't remember this.
Either bought or just did a publishing deal. It may have just been a publishing deal. I can't remember, but yeah, they got involved with. Let me see.
Don't think they bought them. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
It might have just been a publishing deal, but they were very much involved. That is. Let me see. I can bring this up real fast, I think. If my computer will.
Computer.
Deign
Hello,
to
computer.
cooperate. Hello, computer.
You need to actually press the buttons.
I am pressing the buttons. It's being
I was
weird.
trying. I couldn't remember the quote.
Just use the keyboard.
Yeah. How quaint.
Yes. Okay, my computer's being weird, so I can't look up.
Okay.
But they did get involved with digital pictures. I know that for a fact. It might have just been a distribution deal.
That sounds like an Acclaim thing to do. Tom Zito, CEO of Tiny Digital Pictures, is one of the first to take advantage of the technology. Zito, who used to write for New Yorker and Rolling Stone, spends $2 million filming real actors for CD-based interactive games. Corey Haim, The Lost Boys, and Debbie Harry, Hairspray, are among the performers who have starred in his mini productions. His most interesting title this Christmas is Prize Fighter, directed by Ron Stein, who choreographed some boxing sequences in the 1980 Martin Scorsese classic Raging Bull. Besides trying to knock out a series of actors portraying boxers, you, the game player, become part of the story. In this case, a crippled boy on the sidelines cheers for you. Okay,
so what happened is Acclaim invested in digital pictures, and it became the first independent label distributed under their new Acclaim Distribution Inc. that they created in 1994. So they did invest in it, but they didn't buy the whole thing.
PCs get game. I know this is supposed
Yeah,
to be like
because before Doom there wasn't a single thing on a computer platform.
But I'd like to read this as a caveman rather than like a forward statement. PCs
I
get
see.
game.
Yes.
Sega and Nintendo found themselves facing a new and increasingly more dangerous opponent in the early 1990s. PC computers.
Not really.
Just as the Commodore... I mean, they thought. Just as the Commodore computer had caught up to the Atari and Coleco a decade earlier... Personal computers threatened to eclipse the new generation of video game manufacturers as the era of multimedia began.
No.
The evolution to multimedia began as sound became more common on computers. Companies such as Roland and Turtle Beach had long offered sound cards that could handle audio files, and even most early PCs came with cheap speakers built in. Not audio files, it's MIDI files.
Yeah.
But I guess that can technically be disambiguated into audio files.
Yeah, I suppose.
While few people owned early sound cards, and the sound that streamed through PC speakers was tinny at best. At best, yes. This is correct.
Yes.
In 1989, a company called Creative Labs, founded by Singaporean entrepreneur named Sing Wong Hu, introduced a reasonably priced PC card called the Sound Blaster. I believe I looked this up at the time. I'm going to do my quick double check. I'm pretty sure the Sound Blaster came out earlier than this.
89 sounds right to me.
Not to me. I am skeptical. Going down the archive. Alright, fine. You win this one, kid. The card, which featured 11-voice FM synthesizer, input and output jacks, and a MIDI joystick port, became the top-selling add-on card in the PC market. Sound Blaster was not the first sound card. It was not even Creative Labs' first sound card. That's why I was confused.
Right, yeah. Sound Blaster wasn't their first product.
But it was the first sound card to see this kind of success, and Sound Blaster compatibility became a standard throughout the industry. Did you have a Sound Blaster?
I did. Absolutely. Like on our, like not right away, the computer we bought in 93, which was a Pentium, was the first time I had one, and I believe that was a Sound Blaster 16. I believe the Sound Blaster 16 was the first one I had, and then when we bought a new computer upgrading from that one, we got a 64. I still have a Sound Blaster, actually. I have a Sound Blaster Z in my current computer.
Nice.
It actually is. It is actually better than the onboard PC audio.
Right. I mean, yeah. Sound cards still have a place, but it just depends on your.
Yeah, it's not as revolutionary as it used to be. I mean, you can still get good sound out of your onboard audio, but the Sound Blaster does actually sound a little better. I can tell the difference.
In truth, Macintosh computers were much more suited to gaming than PCs.
Oh, no.
Macintosh monitors had slightly higher resolution, slightly higher, at the cost of color? How about that?
Yeah, exactly.
Then, standard PC monitors and Apple computers did not have all the compatibility problems that still haunt PCs. I'm pretty sure there are still problems at the early Macintoshes. Unfortunately, former Apple president Michael Spindler did not want people to see Macintosh as a gaming platform, and did nothing to encourage companies to make games for them.
Yeah, but I mean that started well before Spindler was CEO.
Yeah.
I don't know why he singled out poor Spindler, who, I mean, admittedly is the guy that when you look up Peter Principle in the encyclopedia, his name, his picture is.
Oh boy. Oh, for those who don't know what the Peter Principle is, look it up. Soon, companies such as MediaVision and Gravis released their own Sound Blaster compatible cards. I was about to, if he was about to say just like sound cards, but yeah, Sound Blaster compatible became a big thing. Yes.
Yeah.
He's getting this surprisingly right. This is very uncantian of him.
Boo.
With the advent of Sound Blaster, PC game companies became very aggressive about adding audio to their games. Origin Systems, a company with a well-earned reputation for making technically superior games that would only run on the latest and most powerful personal computers, only when they published Wing Commander, a game called Wing Commander, that began with a virtual conductor directing a symphony. I mean, they were very early on the sound card stuff, because Ultima 3 had all that Mockingbird support. Ultima 5, you could hook 2 Mockingboards into...
It is a shame he... Yes, exactly. It's a shame he doesn't shout out to Sierra, though, for, their role.
The next big move toward multimedia came in the form of CD-ROM drives. Soon companies such as Viacom New Media, Hyperbole Studios, and ICOM were flooding the market with interactive movies that featured bad scripts, amateurish acting, and minimal interactivity.
And yet Seventh Guest was a breakthrough puzzle game, okay.
It wasn't really a puzzle game. It was an adventure game with puzzles.
No, it was a puzzle game. It was a puzzle game with movies.
Sanctuary Woods, a software publisher that would eventually release a few impressive products before going bankrupt, released a series of interactive comics called Victor Vector and Yondo. CD-ROMs have provided the entertainment industry with a new frontier, and a wave of entrepreneurs rushed to take advantage of it. Of the droves of games that flooded the market during the years of multimedia, 3 stood out as the kind of killer applications needed to launch new technologies. The first was Myst, a game that was funded by a Japanese video game publisher called Sunsoft.
Held correctly this time.
Yes. Myst was the creation of Rand and Robin Miller, brothers who had moved to Spokane, Washington to set up a game development company called Cyan Studios. Did they move there to set up the company? I'm not sure about that. We need Obscuratory in here. Phil.
Yeah,
we need Phil to tell us.
That's a good question.
He's the official Cyan historian.
Well, I mean, they were born in Pennsylvania. Well, one was born in Pennsylvania, one was born in Texas. I think, weren't they? They were in Texas, I think, before Cyan was founded, I want to say. Because that rung a bell with me immediately. So, they might have moved to found Cyan.
Founded in 1987.
No, operating out of their parents' basement in their Washington home.
Yeah, they did not move to Spokane to set up a game development company. They were already there.
Yeah.
Okay. So, let me. I'm gonna snip this one just to send it to Phil. Okay. They had sold a handful of games prior to coming up with the idea for a surrealistic puzzle a surrealistic adventure with elaborate puzzles. They needed funding, however. One of the first companies they approached was Activision, but they were turned down. Then they ran into Sunsoft. This is Rand Miller. Take it.
We hooked up with Sun, which is a Japanese company, in 1991. They said, we want a big Epic CD-ROM product, and we said, we're ready. We'll tell you what we need. They funded it well. It ended up that they funded half of the project. Cost more than what we thought, but at the time, we had a relationship with Broderbund as well. When we showed Mist to Broderbund, they just fell in love with it. And now we're back to Sunsoft, just 2 words repeatedly in one paragraph.
As a video game company, Sunsoft cared little about the PC rights. The way the final contract was laid out, Sunsoft gave the Millers $350,000 in exchange for the console rights and went on to release Myst on the 3DO, Jaguar CD, PlayStation, and Saturn. Well, one of those is not published by Sunsoft, if I recall.
Now we're gonna have to look at all of this on the Moby Games.
Because I remember we were looking at this because we were kind of confused about the console releases. So PlayStation. Oh yeah. So PlayStation was Signos. Does it say PlayStation? I forget. Yeah. So.
Yeah, PlayStation was Signosis, as you say. Saturn was Acclaim. But Sunsoft is also on the packaging. So I guess it was a joint thing.
Jaguar. Jaguar was published by Sun and Atari.
Yeah, and the 3DO version was published by Panasonic, and the Sunsoft name is not on the packaging.
So we can give them the other one, but yes. Most of that is wrong, Kent. I'm sure, this is one of these things. You'd have to look at all the boxes to actually know.
Yeah, he did not have Moby Games to rely on.
Yes. Thank you, Moby Games, for existing. I have problems with you sometimes, but you give us somewhere to look.
And thank you for reverting to your old format after that brief dark age, when things went horribly, horribly wrong. That was a moment.
None of these versions sold particularly well, but Sunsoft's investment still paid for itself in less than 1 month. Working with Broderbund, the Millers released their game for Macintosh, and it became a runaway hit. In 1994, Broderbund released a PC version. It became a hit too. Did it wait till 1994? I'm sure Jimmy's article has this.
Probably.
I know it was Macintosh originally, but I thought they released it by the end of the year.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
To Jimmy knows it. He tracked the release of Prince of Persia to make sure that we knew that it was a failure on its initial release.
Right.
Yes. Or the drawbacks to success. See? Does not say. God damn it, Jimmy.
We will have to, not now, not this instant, but we will have to delve deep into the magazines.
Myst went on to become the first CD-ROM game to sell over 1 million units. It remained on the Computer Game bestseller list for 3 years. Broderbund eventually sold 4 million copies of the game. While Myst started out on Macintosh and migrated to PC, the next multimedia blockbuster went in the opposite direction. The Seventh Guest, the Virgin game that was licensed by Nintendo, brought a similar mixture of puzzle solving and exploration to PCs.
No, it did not. I mean, I don't care what people think of either game, but the sense of exploration in Myst was very different from the exploration of Seventh Guest, which was just, here's a big house.
As a showcase for technology, the Seventh Guest was a masterpiece. It featured photorealistically rendered virtual haunted house with
Say so.
yes, with live action video of actors portraying ghosts. Why were they ghosts? Because the green screen sucked.
Exactly.
With far less puzzles than Myst and not merely as visually appealing, the Seventh Guest did not enjoy the same long-lasting success, and critics would later pan it. A lot of people bought it, and a lot of people bought game hardware just so they could play it. Game designer Graham Devine would later say it in defense of
it's Scottish! A lot of people bought it, and a lot of people bought hardware just so they could play it!
You have offended everybody. Not just the Scots.
Sod off, you bugger!
Oh no. This is worse when you did the Japanese thing.
I will say, in all seriousness, though, that I had a friend that got Seventh Guest after it was released, and it was mind-blowing to look at. I mean, once you were with it for a little bit, you realized how shallow it actually was, but it was really mind-blowing to look at when that came out.
The third game, and the one that has had the most long-lasting impact on the gaming world, was Doom 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 Doom. A first-person perspective game in which players stepped into the head of a marine who shoots everything he sees as he works his way towards a confrontation in the depths of hell.
And he doesn't shoot the medkits.
You can. That'll do anything, but yeah.
Right, don't do it.
Doom was a true team effort. Unlike most games at this time.
Right,
I'm sure
yeah.
is the implication of that.
Exactly.
Created by a
Rand and Robin Miller created every last rendered screen of Myst all by themselves.
Created by a group of young computer enthusiasts who had started a company called id Software. Someone did actually point out to me the I...
it's lowercase.
D, it's all lowercase.
It is, because it's the id, which is a lowercase term.
Yeah.
Yep.
For some reason it got kind of codified that it ID, capital D, but that's not the case.
Yeah,
but I will go to bat with Valve as uppercase and then lowercase e. Even though it's technically all uppercase, but the e is just small in a superscript kind of way.
Right.
But
right.
Valve looks cool, and so I do it that way. Formed on February 1st, 1991, it consisted of John Romero, the well-known creator of dozens of computer games and a legend among hardcore gamers. Not really at that time. Like, he made some games, but, like, nobody knew what he was. John Carmack, a somewhat otherworldly but brilliant programmer with a nearly unequaled ability to create incredibly complex graphics engines. Adrian Carmack, a talented artist with a gift for bringing gore and horror to life, and other things. He did Commander Keen too. And Tom Hall, the main designer of Commander Keen, its first product, and a game that helped establish the company's reputation. Romero first came across the idea of 3D games when he called an old friend at Looking Glass. They don't name this old friend, it seems. A company that was designing a game called Ultima Underworld, and of course it was not Looking Glass at the time.
Yes. And that's not when he first came across the idea of 3D games. John Romero knows some stuff. It's when he first was told about the idea of texture mapped.
Yeah, and they already were creating. Well, I mean, this would have been 1990, so I guess I don't.
There weren't that many polygonal games on PC yet, but I'm sure John Romero knew them all.
Well, I'm even just thinking of their earlier experiments. So, like, Catacomb 3D is the texture mapped one, but they did a couple before that. So Hover Tank 3D was 91. I can't remember if there's another one before that.
But right, exactly. Yeah, they had already. The breakthrough with Ultima Underworld was that it was texture mapped surfaces. So no.
Intrigued by the concept, he brought it up with John Carmack to see if it would be possible for them to create a similar game. John talked about. I'll do Carmack and you can do Romero.
Sure.
Because I've listened to enough Carmack talks to know.
Go right ahead.
John talked with some of the Looking Glass people, and they were saying they could do a texture-mapped game. I said that I could do it, and the next month we were doing games every month. I did Catacombs 3D, which is our first 3D game. That's wrong, Carmack. You did Hover Tank. It was about running around dungeons with trolls and stuff. I'm gonna call Carmack out. Brilliant as you are.
Yeah.
Everyone always forgets about Hover Tank 3D. Sad face. In 1992, it released its first hit game, Wolfenstein 3D. The game took its name from an Apple II game created by a man named Silas Warner. I mean, because they got the rights to it, that's why. And before he said Castle Wolfenstein 3D, now it's Wolfenstein 3D.
Yes.
Players viewed Wolfenstein 3D through the eyes of a commando shooting his way through a labyrinth filled with Nazi soldiers, SS men, vicious dogs, and eventually Adolf Hitler. Although it was an exciting game with great graphics, part of Wolfenstein's popularity sprang from its shock value. In previous games, when players shot enemies, the injured targets fell and disappeared. In Wolfenstein 3D, enemies fell and bled on the floor.
Is this Romero?
Yeah, this is Romero.
Yeah. With Wolfenstein, the shock was only half of the attraction. The main draw was the super fast 3D rendering engine and movement. Most of the raves came from the pure adrenaline rush of speeding at 70 frames per second through corridors and mowing down Nazis.
I'm pretty sure most people didn't have the capability to reach 70 frames per second at that time. Yeah, I believe that is actually the cap of Wolfenstein 3D. And yeah, they and Doom is capped at like 35, so it's like half exactly, 35 frames per second. And, before open source versions and all that stuff.
Right.
id games were distributed via a unique method called shareware. Unique? It
had been around for years.
The idea was that customers could download the first section of the game for free from the internet and order it by mail. If they liked the game, they could purchase the rest of it by contacting the publisher. Shareware offered small companies the chance to market their games and computer tools without having to compete with larger, more powerful companies for retail shelf space. In the case of Wolfenstein 3D, the game was broken into 3 separate missions, the first of which was available as shareware. id and Apogee, the firm that marketed id's early games, maximized profits by creating Wolfenstein games several Wolfenstein games at once. 3 basic missions, Nocturnal missions, and Spear of Destiny missions, which were sold as a retail product.
Wolfenstein 3D was a trilogy. It had 3 episodes. That's sort of a shareware thing. Then we did Spear of Destiny, which is a retail version of Wolfenstein. It was a completely new adventure, but with the Wolfenstein engine.
What the heck is the Nocturnal missions?
That's a good question. That doesn't sound familiar.
Comprise episode 4, 5, and 6. So nobody ever talks about this. I guess because the retail version of Wolfenstein 3D included those, but did not include Spear of Destiny. Because I've heard of Spear of Destiny before.
Yeah, because I knew that there were 3 prequels. I'd never heard them called the Nocturnal missions before, but they are, yeah. That is,
and of course,
accurate.
it's a dirty pun.
Yeah, of course.
id's next hit, and the first game published under the id label, was Doom. Yeah, I guess that's true, yeah. It took John Carmack 6 months to create the graphics engine, with Tom Hall leading the game and map designs.
They've got it, yeah, he's leaving.
Okay.
They've got it, because he was doing it before he left.
Okay. Partway through the project, however, Hall left and John Romero took over over programming Doomed, the game's map editor, while at the same time doing programming and map design. I mean, his programming, he was doing, I think it was mainly scripting. I'm not sure he programmed anything in Doom.
Right,
aside
exactly.
from the editor, which is a big task and everything, so
Right.
he's a brilliant guy.
Oh, yeah.
Not here to denigrate Mr. Romero at all, who has been very kind to me as well, so... but I just don't think he did any, real programming.
And who is, genuinely interested in the history of the industry, which is fantastic.
He is a outstanding fellow. Love you, Mr. Romero. Props out to you. When the project was complete, everyone in the company knew they had a surefire hit. Not only did Doom have more gore than Wolfenstein 3D, which is obviously the metric of which you measure success, it was decorated with satanic symbols and populated with demons, another way you measure success. Images that thrilled gamers but infuriated critics of the gaming industry. Since it was originally released as shareware, however, critics did not notice it until a few months after its release. In the meantime, Doom created a phenomenon unlike any PC game before or after it.
We put out a press release in January of 1993 saying what our next game, Doom, was going to have in it. From January to December all of 1993, the entire internet thing was really growing. We had news groups about Doom already, before the game was out. So we'd leak out a little bit more information. There would be an alpha that would leak, or a beta that would leak, and people just started going nuts. So when the game was released, it crashed the University of Wisconsin's computers 2 times because there were so many people hitting it for Doom. We just knew that when the game came out, that this was it. This thing was great.
Doom set a precedent for computer games. It established the 3D first-person shooter genre, a popular style of gaming that would top the bestsellers list for years. It was not the first first-person shooter. It set the standard by which such games as Duke Nukem 3D, Jedi Knight, Unreal, and Descent would be judged. Jedi Knight is not a high bar to match. Isn't Jedi Knight... Wait,
the original Dark Forces is much better.
Which one's Jedi Knight? Is that the second one? Because as I've heard, the second one.
In my opinion.
But I've heard the third one, whatever that one is good.
Are you still there? Can you hear me?
Oh my god, what the heck? Okay. Are we back? Are we good?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. That's what. Yeah, it just disconnected for a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was saying, I heard you say Jedi Knight's a low bar, and I was saying, the original Dark Forces was better.
Okay. I think I'm still streaming. It says 0 kilobits per second. Am I still streaming?
The stream has decided this chapter is too damn long. Where's the stream? I can tell you if you're still streaming.
Yeah, disconnect or reconnecting in 13 seconds. I don't know. I hope this is not an internet cap thing because we made sure that we weren't capped.
Well, where are you streaming?
It should be under the live stream channel. Play history.
Oh yeah, no, I can see it through Discord.
No, but in the live stream chat channel, right there. Play history.
I got you. Live stream chat channel. Okay, yeah, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Say something.
Hello. My name is Google Bar.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back.
I guess because the sound is, I'm getting the sound through this. I'm not getting sound through Twitch, but I am seeing the stream in Twitch.
Yeah, it came back. It said.
Yeah.
Here,
so yeah. You're
so
good.
for the 2 viewers, panic over. We're back. All right. Doom also brought attention to shareware, validating it as a viable means of software delivery and establishing the idea of free demonstration copies as a marketing method. Mr. Alex Smith, would you like to tell us about the shareware section in your local?
Oh gosh, yes, computer. In the local Best Buy, yes. There was right at the front of the software. Front oriented towards the doors, there was the shareware ghetto where there were just racks of shareware that nobody ever looked at and nobody ever cared about. Yeah.
Legitimate.
Legitimate.
Doom also demonstrated the entertainment power of multiplayer games. One of the game's better options was Death Match 2 words, a mode in which players could hunt each other in teams instead of going after demons and monsters.
You have to be in teams. You could
Yeah.
just go after each other individually.
Putting that as a... It would become Doom would become a lightning rod in later years. Okay, it would become a focal point for those who wanted to regulate or end the perceived stranglehold on that the largest companies held over the entire and entertainment industry. Even as id completed its game, powerful forces were gathering in Washington, D.C. The gaming industry was about to come under attack. That would be felt from Redwood City, Washington, to Redmond. Or to Redwood City, California, to Redmond, Washington.
I mean, that's actually a pretty small part of the United States.
Yeah,
That's not an impressive spread.
yeah, that... Oh, went through Oregon. Oh, look out.
Oh,
Alright, so
dear.
that will be the end of that for tonight. But yes,
we're gonna get into some C-SPAN action next time.
Indeed. When you could just read Jimmy's article instead. Yes, the whole transcript. Right there for you, if you don't want to cringe on the on viewing it, of which you will if you view it for too long. All right,
God.
so that will be the video for tonight. That will be the end of the 8th part, and we will be back with part 9 sometime in the future.
After we recover from doing this whole chapter, my God.
Oh man, chapter 24 of Kent. You are in for a long haul. Just be aware of that. All right, so peace unto you.